Hello and welcome to the SRO Esports GT Series Grand Finale from Suzuka. We had a brilliant 5-round championship earlier this year, and now it's time to put all 3 of our classes on track at the same time. We've got the AM class, which is from the public qualifiers. We've got silver drivers from the series like champion Jesus Cecilia and frontrunners Arthur Camara and Enzo Benito. And we've got pros including Andy Soucek and Roman Monti. Another pro we've got is David Perrell, who can help with driver coaching in both the real world and the sim world. Let's take a look. With the success of this series, SRO are branching out into different esports series around the world, so keep your eyes peeled for this. Very excited for the GT Esports Asia Championship to get underway. But in Asia, for this Suzuka race in the grand finale, it is a new format. It's a 2-hour race this time with a mandatory pit stop. Now, you don't have to change your tyres, but you do have to put in some fuel. So that's going to bring in an element of strategy that we maybe didn't see in the earlier rounds of the series. Tyre management, fuel consumption and strategy are going to be incredibly important, as is getting to grips with this Suzuka circuit, one of the greatest racetracks in the world. Let's take a look at it with the track guide.
Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. I'm sorry I can't be here tonight after the grand final. I'm racing at Silverstone in F2, so yeah, I'm very happy to be back at real racing, but unfortunately I can't take part in the SRO Esports grand final. I wish everyone all the best and good luck. In the meantime, I will be back this winter with some sim racing when I will have more off time. So you can have a look at my onboard at Suzuka in my Porsche GT3, and hope you enjoy the race. Bye.
Paul Jeffrey from Race Department here as we head onto the Suzuka circuit for a Fanatec-powered guided lap on board with Louis Delatraz, heading into the first corner, 260 kilometers per hour, down a 4th gear, control the car on the brakes, run it out wide into 3rd, catch the apex on the inside as we run the car all the way out, maximising the width of the circuit before we head into Snake, 3rd gear. Incredibly important to catch the apex on each section of corner here, lest you'll be running wide and losing barrel loads of time through one of the most complex and technical parts of this wonderful Japanese racetrack. Into the final left-hand part of the corner, long radius. Massively important to get on the accelerator as early as possible for the run up to Degner. This is an incredibly fast part of the racetrack. Into 4th gear, catch the inside curve, run wide, down a 3rd gear, be careful on the off camber not to run too wide onto the AstroTurf and lose time as we go under the bridge for the figure of 8 configuration that is the Suzuka Grand Prix track. Into the hairpin, down into 1st gear, be careful not to lock a tyre, catch the car up the inside, accelerate hard as you possibly can now for one of the fastest parts of the track. This is a moment for a driver to relax, check his gauges, check his tyre temperatures and prepare himself mentally and physically for the spoon corner, a double apex left-hander. First part of the corner, 3rd gear, nice and tight in, run the car out wide, balance the car on the brake into 2nd gear, occasionally get a little bit of snap oversteer, which we get there, but we managed to keep it under control for the back stretch, the fastest part of the racetrack now, foot planted firmly to the floor as we're coming into the 130R, a flat out, incredibly dangerous old school corner. The Porsche grips beautifully, we don't need to run up to the full width of the circuit as we head into the chicane, down a 4th, 3rd, 2nd gear, accelerate between the 2 corners, catch the inside apex, don't run too wide onto the AstroTurf, and that is a lap of the 3.6 mile Suzuka Grand Prix circuit powered by Fanatec.
So that's the iconic Suzuka track. 2 hours of racing in the SRO Esports GT Series grand finale coming up now. So let's head over to the commentary team of Ben Constanduros, Martin Haven, and of course, David Addison.
Guys, you are muted. Ben, you are muted.
I will be taking part in the pit lane as your kind of pit reporter inside the game, looking at the live timing screen. But we do have the voice of the gods, and it can't be more real than David Addison and Martin Haven as your commentators for this evening. David, you've already done a day's worth of commentary. Have you got any words left? Can't hear David. I think he's in a different room. So he'll talk to me in a second. But Martin is now in the room, but perhaps muted. David, are you there?
I am now, Ben, yes. Strangely, even though Martin Haven and I are in the same place, we are discovering all sorts of new possible gremlins that can crop up on a Sunday evening, you see, because gremlins don't often work on a Sunday evening. But we found a few to play with this evening. But we are here, and we're looking forward to what promises to be a fascinating race. I mean, it's a great circuit that's been chosen for this grand finale. And the entry itself is a really impressive one, isn't it? With a few of the pros that we've got used to seeing over the course of the season. The Silvers that really were standouts, and the AMs, and there are many of those that have had a very competitive championship as well.
And the man that's guided through the AM Championship over the last couple of weeks has been Martin Haven, who joins us as AM expert and commentator expert extraordinaire. We talk about them as AMs, Martin, but they're just as pro as the silver drivers in the field that were chosen as part of the Silver Series.
I think the big difference is that they're not generally part of large teams like most of the pro sim racers are. But you're right. I mean, that's been one of the takeaways for me from the AM series is how relentlessly on the money these guys are. It's not like us sitting down and fooling around with the game and crashing every third lap or every third corner, which is what David and I would clearly do, because that's what our real racing driving was like. I mean, these guys are absolutely on the money. All our races have been 60 minutes, hell for leather from lights to flag. So I mean, an indication of that, you just heard the circuit description from Paul Jeffrey, who I was doing the commentary with. We were wondering just how well the AM guys would go against the Silvers and the pro drivers. Well, the answer is we've got an AM on pole, and he was 6th in the points. So the answer is they go quite well, actually, against all the other sort of better known and better fancied drivers. So that's going to be very interesting, I think, to see just how it all works out in the mix. Longer race, more strategy, and setup is going to be king, really, isn't it?
Yeah, a mixture of vehicles have been chosen. Here are some of those names. Mikhail Statenko has the pole position for GTWR Racing Team. Tim Yarshall, really a silver driver in ACC. We're using Assetto Corsa Competizione as our platform. Florian Hasser has been showing very well there. Teammates at Euronics Gaming. You can see at the top of the screen, the GTWR Esports silver drivers. Andrea Capoccia will start on the front row of the grid in his Audi alongside his AM teammate. Giorgio Simonini, also part of that team, and Simonini a bit further down in 13th on the grid. And they are the Audi competitors in their R8 LMS Evo machines. The next up is the AMR V8 Vantage Aston Martin, Jesus Cecilia, who won the Silver Championship. He'll start in 3rd position. Here a look at the Bentley drivers. 2 pros from Bentley, Andy Susek. Sadly, Romain Monti will not be with us because of a pedal issue with his machine at home, so we don't see him. Alberto Garcia is the silver driver, and Nizar Saouri in the AM Bentley.
Yeah, he was a winner at Silverstone, the season opener, so he's got pedigree in that Bentley as well.
Ferrari have entered their works drivers from the F1 Esports Championship. Davide Tonizza and Enzo Bonita always there and thereabouts. And David Perrell, the pro driver, much as pro sim driver as he is pro real driver. The silver drivers for Lamborghini, Giovanni De Salva and Camille Franchak. He was the winner of the SRO Esports Championship last year when it was an on-site event supporting the endurance events. Lexus with 3 cars. That's a bit of a surprise. Haniel Sabti, Axel Petit and Alexandre Vromont. No AM drivers there, but McLaren well represented by G2 Esports duo Arthur Camara and Niels Naujoks, Patrick Selva and Yuri Pachenko as well. And we've got Esquilicon back in the Mercedes. Not very many Mercedes. Watch out for Emir Hossani, who is incredibly fast and really didn't have a good season in that championship. But this one-off event, perhaps more his thing. Porsches, Samir Ibrahimi, very, very fast. A privateer with Alex Turato and then Eamon Murphy alongside actually 5 Porsches. But as previously mentioned by Jack, sadly, our champion, Louis Delatraz, so busy, David, in the real world of motorsports, not only in Formula 2, but also participating in the SRO GT Championship, that doesn't have the time to join us this evening.
Yeah, that's going to become a problem for future esports championships and events, isn't it? Because as the real world racing starts to take shape once again, it's not just a weekend that drivers are losing, it's perhaps a Thursday to travel, to practice Friday, to qualify Saturday, to race on a Sunday. So it might well be that early in the week of an evening becomes the go-to esports time, but we shall see. But even so, Ben, it is fair to say we've got a great entry for this grand finale. Great mix of drivers and great mix of brands as well, looking at Aston Martin and Ferrari and Mercedes as the cars turn their way around the Suzuka circuit, which is a really good choice. So we're about to go racing, aren't we? Is it going to be from the Pro, the Silver or the AMs that we find a winner? Let's put Ben on the spot first. Who's your money on, Ben?
I think the McLarens have always been strong. Jesus Cecilia, though, up there in 3rd position in the Aston Martin, looks very good. Of course, BOP, not so much of a thing here. David Tanitza in the Ferrari. I'd fancy a Ferrari, actually. It'd be really nice to see a Ferrari on the top.
Right, so as fence sitting went, Constanturance, that was a pretty good example. Right, let's move on. Martin, thoughts on what brand or what driver might win?
I don't know. I mean, I have no previous of Suzuka with any of these, so
that has never stopped you from making an opinion before.
All right, well, let's go with Statsenko. Samir Ibrahimi, over the long run of the AM series, over 5 races, he was almost always at the front in his Porsche, and he hasn't qualified quite so strongly here, 20th place, but he does race strongly. So he's the AM champion. Okay, I'll put my AM shirt on him. That'll hurt him.
Okay, well, I would normally say Jesus Cecilia, bearing in mind that he's the silver champion and he's a double winner, but the 2 wins came in the wet and it's not looking very wet here, so he might not come out on top, but he has qualified well. 3rd fastest, there he is, number 15, Jesus Cecilia. So I'll go for the Aston Martin. It's a fine British brand. We're about to go racing. It's 2 hours. There's a mandatory pit stop. We'll let our pit lane correspondent Ben Constanduras worry about that in due course and pit strategy and explain how all that's going to work, because we are about to go racing. The cars come now down towards the final chicane, work their way through what is known as either the Casio Triangle or the last curve, depending on your point of view. But anyway, as I say, we are set to go racing. Statsenko starts on pole position. Andrea Capoccia will line up alongside him, and they rumble their way now up towards the timing line. David Tonitza lining up 4th with pole position then on the inside of the grid. Jesus Cecilia there in the number 15 Aston Martin. So 2 hours of racing, the SRO Esport GT Series Championship Grand Finale set to get underway. The lights are red. The field turns its way slowly up towards the timing line. They're in the 2x2 Noah's Ark formation. When the lights change, we will be in business. And this 2-hour race is go. The lights go green. The 2 Audis off the front of the grid accelerate away. Now, who is it going to be? Is it going to be Statsenko or Capoccia who scores the inside line? It is Statsenko from pole position. A drama already. Tonitza gets sideways, gets clipped by an Audi. And from 4th on the grid, he's going to come out, if he's lucky, just in the top 10. But drama for David Tonitza right at the first corner.
That looked like Tonitza just being a little ambitious on colder tyres. Maybe he hadn't worked enough pressure, and I'm not sure there was contact to put him sideways. It is Statsenko that leads in the white, red and black Audi. Capoccia behind him, and the Aston Martin Sicilia in 3rd position. So Audi locking out the front row, but not dominating qualifying quite as much. Tim Yarshell up to 6th, Alex Turato in the Porsche up to 7th place. There'll be lots of changes as the Ferrari driver tries to recover that lost ground in the 95 car. David Tonitza, there he is, coming through the Degler curbs. He's got to try and work out where he's going to find pace on these Audis.
So up towards the hairpin they come. Tonitza then crawling all over the back of the Audi, as you see. That was the car I think he just clipped, in fact. He got all sideways. It looked as though it was a Tonitza mistake, the back coming round on him. He tried to save it, but the good news is he kept out of the gravel. He's still in the race and he's still competitive, and of course there is a long way to go. This is the longest of the SRO Esport GT Series races that we've had at 2 hours. So the race leading car then accelerating up towards the end of lap 1, number 144, Mikhail Statsenko leading from Andrea Capoccia. The 2 Audis run 1 and 2. Jesus Cecilia is third then as they work their way up through 130R, heading towards the Casio Triangle in a moment. Audi 1-2, Aston Martin is 3, and Statsenko doing a good job of being able to fend off Capoccia. Remember, it's Am ahead of Silver here. As there, look, Porsche to the outside line, the Rover Racing Porsche of Jan-Marcel Dietrich tries to gain ground coming down towards the chicane. Round the outside, and now let's see what grunt the Porsche has got as the leaders complete that one, and we've got a yellow flag out somewhere.
Yeah, yellow flags further back in the field, so it shouldn't disrupt the leaders. 4 of the top 8 from the AM category, so they'll be very happy with that. And the leader, Statsenko, there's David Tonitza, and Dietrich was hanging on to 10th place there from Simononi, but the black Audi is on the inside. I think he's squeezed by the Porsche. He has. So Simonini up into 10th place, and Dietrich in that Rover Racing Porsche has been pushed down to 11th. Florian Haase looking at in the blue Audi. Now that's taken me a little bit to recognise exactly, because that's not the colours he was racing in through the AM season. That's one of the joys for me of watching these esports races, is that they are much more wont to change their liveries from day to day and race to race than in the real world. Because of course it doesn't cost anything.
No, that's true. Keep you on your toes as well. I was about to suggest that the leading pro was down in 23rd place, Andy Suchek, but he's dropped even lower down than that, I'm afraid to say. As there, look, we've got 3 now, 4 for the race lead, and a change as well, because Amir Hosseini, who was really quick in the charity event we had at Monza at the end of March, he's just got up into 3rd place in the Mercedes, so it's Am ahead of 3 silvers. But Ben, we know from previous races that Amir Hosseini is always a very competitive driver, even though his results didn't necessarily reflect the speed in the series.
Yeah, he's got incredible speed, hasn't he? But it's about kind of consistency for him and keeping out of trouble as well. Remember, he's got that great speed and very good at defending, John Watson said, but sometimes a little bit heavy-handed with his defensive work. So if he can knuckle down and focus and get that Mercedes running well, then with this long event, you don't have to be panicky about passing people straight away. You can think about your strategy. And we've already had a pit visitor in Axel Petit. He is now down in 29th and last position in the Lexus. There was a bit of repair work to do on his car because he'd made contact with David Perrell, I think, on lap 1. They were right at the tail of the field. The other person you saw spinning at the chicane was Alberto Garcia, who took a loop there, but he is now continued and he's down in 27th. So just one pit visitor, and of course you are allowed to visit the pits at any point. There is no window that you have to fit into.
Okay, so we can expect pit stops to shuffle the order. We're getting a drive-through for the car in 5th place, Martin.
Yeah, Tim Jarchel, one of the top Audi drivers in the AM series, and he is the 2nd AM in the field, 5th position. And was that for jumping the start? Did he make a pass before the lights went green? Or at least try to. Yeah, see there in the replay, you see the Mercedes and the Audi ganging up on the Aston.
And you also see the contact that just disposed of Finitra. It was a nudge. I was suggesting it might have been a driver error, cold tyres at the start of the race. But no, there was a definite nudge from, I think it might have been Jarchel's Audi number 53,
Yeah, heads the drive-through, and again, not the colours he raced in the AM series either. So he and Florian Haase have both gone with this blue livery for this particular race.
But even trying to be incognito, you still don't get round the officials, do you? You still get your drive-through. So there he is, 5th. Drive-through will be served, but of course in a 2-hour race he can make amends for that. Up front, it is the best of the AMs, Statsenko leading, but Capoccia, I thought, was just getting a little bit more toey, a little bit more committed to the task. Then you've got in 3rd place Amir Hosseini, and that grunt and go Mercedes is going to be well worth watching now. It's caught up and past the Aston Martin, and look, it's getting away. Cecilia, for the moment, is a bit busy defending from Jarchel, but in a sense, that's a phony fight. He doesn't need to, because the Audi is going to have to pit for that enforced drive-through, and he's got to take that within 3 laps.
And of course he'll know that because that'll be on his timing as well. And very wisely, Tim Yarshel comes in immediately. The longer you've got to recover from that drive through, the better it'll work for you. So Florian Haase now on his own in 8th position. Yarshel will drop down to somewhere right at the tail of the field, probably just ahead of Axel Petit, but not by much. There you go, plunging down the order as he comes back out of the pit lane.
We have 3 pros then in the entry. They're 24th, 25th and 28th in the order. So it does illustrate just how different real-world racing is from sim racing as the McLarens file their way through, chased in turn by Lexus, by what else have we got in that battle pack, Porsche, and the race leader then with 1 hour and 53 minutes to go. For the moment remains then as Mikhail Statsenko, but Andrea Capoccia giving energetic chase as you look lower down the order at what is going on. There's Capoccia through a shot, and do we have a change for the lead? Because Capoccia accelerates towards us. Statsenko still doing his level best to hang on in there. Amir Hosseini is the man to watch, but yes, the race leading Audi is still absolutely tied together. Statsenko keeping Capoccia at bay, but Hosseini has very much become part of that battle for the lead.
He has, but the question is, why was the Mercedes so unpopular? There are only 2 in this field. It wasn't represented in the AM category at all, and clearly not that represented either in the Silvers or in the Pro category. So what is it about the car that works here that perhaps didn't work over the whole range of the races? I mean, we've seen it be very competitive in Spa, but that's not everywhere. He's got good top-end speed, there's no question about that. Looking at the back of Capoccia's black Audi, can't find a way through there. You'd have to be brave, wouldn't you, to try going around the outside as he come down through 130R down to the chicane. And it might be that he has to try and play a slightly longer game. Of course, each of these different marks will change the balance of fuel and tyre wear, will change the performance relative to the others. But it's Statsenko, Capoccia, Hosseini and Cecilia, who's in 4th position in the Aston Martin. That's David's money there. Where's my money? What has that done? Samir Ibrahimi. Well, he's moved up from 20th to 19th, but that was only for a drive-through from somebody ahead of him. So my 10 years is weighing him down.
As ever with our predictions, we're spot off, aren't we, really, here? So up front, Statsenko it is by 0.4 of a second. Just going back to your Mercedes point, and Ben might have a thought on this as well, but I seem to remember that we had more of them at Monza in the non-championship race, and people had a look at what was competitive and had a sniff of the BOP, and then we had a bit of shuffling and changing as people thought, okay, maybe that isn't the car to have. And it did seem, Ben, as though the number of Mercedes dwindled after Monza, didn't it?
Well, it was very much, remember the championship charity race was a one-off thing, whereas once you got into the full 5-round championship, you had to commit to your car. And across the balance of all of the different tracks that we were going to, obviously we didn't know about Kyalami, but the rest of them we knew, and the balance of tracks just didn't suit the Mercedes. It's amazing. Even to me, who's I find 5 or 6 seconds a lap off the pace of these guys. I've been doing a little bit of racing, I've been trying to anyway, and it is amazing how different all of these cars feel as opposed to, and I'm sure it's the same in the real world, but there is definitely cars that suit tracks better than others, have different balances, and as you're right in saying, look after their tyres better and their fuel better, and that is an important thing in this particular race.
Now, David, we are looking at the picture of the leaders, and creeping into shot is the Lexus of Alex Petit. So the question now for Mikhail Statsenko, our race leader, is where is he going to catch this Lexus? How long is it going to take? And how easy or otherwise is it going to be to get by? And of course, behind, Capoccia in the black Audi is thinking, all right, here we go, except he's dropped a little bit further back from Statsenko, the leader, than he wants to, and he's got that wretched Mercedes up his exhaust pipe. So if he's going to make a pass, is that Perrell? No, that's Enzo Benito.
It is,
yeah.
And he's battling with Torato in the Porsche. This is the 5th and 6th. Torato goes back ahead, but they're trading places. The Porsche stays ahead of the Ferrari. Yeah, I mean, the traffic is going to be interesting because that Lexus is a good straight line car. It's got good grunt in a straight line and good torque to drag it out of a slow corner. But Axel Petit is an experienced driver in sim racing terms, so I don't think he's going to do anything silly. He won't get in the way. Enzo Benito here, who we had high hopes for in the Silver Series, but he's struggled a little bit with the Ferrari, and he's just lost another place, as you see, to Alex Torato, one of the AMs. 10th in the championship he was, and Torato, having got back ahead, is doing his best now just to edge away ever so slightly. Hauser is 7th, Tonizza recovering after his half spin at the first corner is 8th, Simonini is 9th, and Jan Marcel Dietrich in the Rover Racing liveried Porsche is in 10th. As you see, the leaders now have to thread their way through the traffic. Statsenko goes around the outside of the Lexus. Capoccia knows he can't afford to sit there. We don't get Lapri too often in the esports series, but the two leading Audis have gone through, and so too has Hosseini. Nobody gains, nobody loses out of all of that, and if anything, it's given Hosseini renewed optimism, Martin, to try to find a way up into second spot.
I just worried about the Aston Martin there for a moment. He managed to make it through, but he was right behind the Mercedes at this point on the previous lap, and he just dropped back a little. But you're right, Petit staying out of the way. The next deal, of course, is for Alex Torato in the Porsche, who's got the Ferrari right behind him. He's got to get a clean pass as well. Torato finished just in the top 10 with points in the final round of the AM Championship, which was at Mount Panorama. What a great choice that was from the fans. But he also scored strongly. He was in third place at Silverstone, the season opener. Here we go, challenge for second place. The Mercedes had a good slingshot from the Casio triangle, and then the advantage vanished down into turn 1.
But while these two are squabbling, Jesus Cecilia is buying back into the battle, isn't he? Because the Aston Martin is creeping back into contention. 5th is Torato, but he has got to first of all get past the traffic and then catch up. But now you see, because the Audi in second place of Capoccia is going defensive, Hosseini has got a bit stuck, and Cecilia now is right back on the tail of the Mercedes. So you've got two big, powerful front-engine GT3 brands there. Mercedes just ahead of Aston Martin. And actually, while Capoccia is having to go defensive now, Statsenko, all of a sudden, Martin, has got something like a discernible gap.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the leader needs. Of course, he needs this battle to go on forever and ever. Well, essentially an hour and 47 minutes and a couple of seconds would be nice. But the longer it does go on, the more chance he has to run away, then the better it'll be for him in the long run. So Capoccia at the moment is just trying to hang on to second place. Hosseini is trying to get it. Cecilia is trying to get past him in the R Motorsport car. But yeah, the longer it goes on, then the leader clear on his own, not giving a toe to anybody as well in the next couple of laps. He'll be able to start accelerating away.
But look again, this elasticated third place gap has stretched out, hasn't it? Because having started the sentence with Cecilia right up behind Hosseini, he then dropped back a little bit around the mid part of the lap. The Mercedes sprints away, so Cecilia has got to do the hard work all over again. And Ben, I wonder from your timing screens whether you can keep an eye for us on Torato, because it does seem to the eye as though the Porsche in 5th place is getting a little bit closer, and it won't be too long, surely, even allowing for the traffic, before Alex Torato joins in that leading gaggle.
Well, Amir Hosseini lost a second on this lap from that little half a challenge. So instantly he falls into the clutches of Torato. Jesus Cecilia lost 7/10 on that lap, whereas Torato, running his consistent 2-minute 0 laps, brought him a little bit closer. And that's exactly what you're seeing. But it was more to do with that half-assed challenge at the start of the lap than Torato picking up the pace.
Right, okay. So Statsenko, in the meantime, trying to stretch that gap. What he had done, now it comes down again. All of these gaps fascinatingly elasticated. No one really being able, it doesn't seem to kind of form a pattern, Martin. One corner you think, right, it's getting away. The next, it shrinks again. It's great for us to watch, but it also, it's a hard race to read at the moment. Yeah,
and I think it's always going to be this early in a 2-hour race. We've only gone in 15 minutes, but it was interesting how quickly the black Audi caught the red, white and black one. Statsenko looked like he was going to have maybe 5, 6, 7 tenths. Came down to just a tenth as they came across the line. So Capoccia was right back with him, and he's brought the others. He's brought the Mercedes, he's brought the Aston. Now, change there, because Torato and Benito have both gone by. As they got down there to the spoon curve, they had both gone by the back marker. So you will see them next up. You'll see the Porsche in 5th position, Alex Torato with the Ferrari behind it, and they are a little freer now to try and chase this group down. Of course, these guys are punching a big hole in the air, and that won't hurt either. The Porsche will be able to try and close up fast.
That's true enough. As you ride now with Amir Hosseini, this is the run heading towards the completion of the lap, down towards 130R and then towards the Casio triangle. brave drivers part of the circuit. This, the two Audis for the race lead, still nose to tail. Statsenko versus Capoccia. Mikhail Statsenko, the race leader, as he has been since the start. Amir Hosseini qualified 5th, he's up to 3rd. 4th, Jesus Cecilia, but Alex Torata 5th, Enzo Benito 6th. Accelerate then out of the Casio triangle, over the timing line. Clock ticks on down, 3:45 local time is where the time of day has been set for, and therefore the ambient conditions according to that. Through turn 1 they go then, out of first corner up towards Snake, and again Capoccia, just when he wants to start attacking Statsenko for the lead, has got to think about that Mercedes right there behind him. More battles further down. Alexandre Vromont in 18th place there in number 240, the Lexus, and he's got Ibrahimi behind him in the Porsche number 49, so 18th and 19th, a pair of them on the back of Patrick Selva, who was a race winner in the Silver Series in dominant fashion at Silverstone in round 1.
Yeah, and in that multicoloured Porsche is the champion of the AM Series, Samir Ibrahimi. Was on the podium in all but one race. Didn't win, but he had a 2nd and 2 third places. He was 4th in the season opener at Silverstone, the only race that he didn't score in, round 4 in Barcelona. And it was really tough, 40 cars in a 1 hour race, only 10 get points. And in fact, the race leader, Mikhail Statsenko, the Russian driver, scored just once. He had 25 points at the end of the season. So he was the winner in Spa in some very wild conditions and a 37 car pile-up on lap 1. He managed to just about get through it and then was uncatchable after that. So that was his big point score, his only point score of the season.
His big payday, as it were, yeah.
It was, but now he's out front again without having everybody wrecked. He was 4th on the grid, in fairness, and when the rain came, he just, by the skin of his teeth, avoided drama. Karna Benai and Andy Suchek in the Bentley, the K-Pax car, 11th in the Pro Series. Where's he running at the moment? 24th position.
But this is your pro class lead battle, can you believe? 24th and 25th, Ezequiel Perez compact behind him. So you've got an AM ahead of the Silver Stars, and your pros being humbled a little bit at the moment. Possibly you could argue because of real world racing, they've got other priorities. However, they're a long, long way down the order. David Tonizza then ahead of Jan Marcel Dietrich. Ferrari versus Porsche, 2 great sports car racing brands dive down through first corner. And right now, it is still the Ferrari that's just got the advantage, as in turn, Tonizza is trying to close up onto the back of Florian Hasse.
Yeah, Florian Hasse 4th in the AM class. He was the winner in Barcelona. He also scored 5th position in race 2 in Spa in the rain. Actually, he was running 2nd early on in the race and then had an error, dropped himself off the road, came back into it, and he's there in that pale blue car. Sister car, of course, having the drive-through early on. His car was silver highlights on the wing end plates and on the dive planes, which you can barely see. The other car with bright pink highlights, which was very much more a photogenic choice, I think.
But you mentioned that just to prove that you've got your anorak on, I can tell. We've got a yellow flag out, and there's a car in the gravel. There it is, and that was Capoccia. He was running 2nd, and now Capoccia is off the road. Now, Ben, do we know what happened to him? Was that a driver error, or was there contact? What can we discern about the man that was running 2nd being off the road? He was, of course, in a close battle with Hosseini, wasn't he?
Yes, I just need to get into my replay mode to find out exactly what's happened. It takes me a few moments to get to the right car and the like.
Apologies, it wasn't meant to be a hospital pass. I'll let you go off and go and compile the evidence.
Suddenly it's test match special. You're asking the score of how many threes did Jeffrey Boycott score in the Southern Hemisphere before lunch on the 2nd day?
Oh, that's an easy one, Martin.
Yeah,
right, so this is the new order then. It is Statsenko from Hosseini from Sicilia. So we've got 3 for the race lead. Torato is up to 4th and, of course, is closing. We'll give you an update on the Capoccia demise as soon as we have one.
3 AMs in the top 6, I'll just say.
Thanks so much, yes, and that therefore means 3 silvers in the top 6.
Okay, so let's have a look here as the Mercedes tries to go the long way round the outside. This isn't where the incident happened on the previous lap, but I'm suggesting possibly that Hosseini was having a go at the Audi because he's still having a go at this Audi, or, well, the other side of the coin is he's so buoyed up by one Audi falling off, he's trying to make the other one fall off as well.
has got a long nose, that Mercedes. Long noses tend to get shoved into gaps, don't they? But Hosseini is taking Cecilia with him as well. So you're right. I mean, he's there. He's on the tail. He's giving Statsenko a really, really hard time now. Amir Hosseini, who came oh so close to winning that Monza charity event, but there was contact between him and Niels Noyox. It put him off the road. He'd like to win this to go out on a high. But actually, just when he wants to attack, look what's going on. He's got Cecilia right up behind him. Now this
Here's a replay.
Is Capoccia second. Hosseini is behind him in third place. Hosseini closes, and Capoccia just exits stage left.
It's actually, he's crossed up. You can't see it from the outside view, but as he hits that curb, the rear end steps away. He corrects it and obviously then spits himself stage left and into the wall. So he didn't actually touch the wall. He stayed out the wall, went through the gravel, and is now back in the race, but obviously losing a lot of time. Strategy can still play a part, though. He can still get himself back up into a decent position.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So now we've got 5 for the race lead. Statsenko, Hosseini, Cecilia, Torato, Bonito and Haase. That is your top 6. 3 AMs, 3 silvers. Hosseini makes his move for the race lead. But that Audi is a very rapid car, isn't it? Because even at this part of the circuit where you might anticipate the power of the Mercedes to carry it through, Statsenko hangs on to the advantage. Hosseini brakes late, diving into the chicane. Again, gets a face full of the R8. Flicks right, flicks left, right again, onto the pit straight. And look, the Audi's gone. 2 lengths gained as he accelerates out of the corner.
That's remarkable, isn't it? Because it looked like suddenly Hosseini's car had started to fire on all cylinders and he just drove by Statsenko until suddenly he didn't. And then Statsenko on the inside in 130R had the advantage. And that's just ridiculous. So Statsenko hanging on. He does know how to win in trying conditions, but Hosseini is all over the back of him. And yet the Audi just starts to canter away as he picks up the throttle off the corners. And so Hosseini then spends all of his top-end speed down the straight, trying to close that back again. And we've now got all 5 top drivers together. What's the gap from the leader back to 5th place Benito? 1.2 seconds maybe. Benito behind Torato's Porsche, and they've dropped Florian Haase a long way back. Florian Haase now nearly 4 seconds there. He is behind the leader, and he's leading the peloton. He's got Dietrich, Franchak, and Noyox as well. And again, the Mercedes looks the long way around the outside. Here's a chance for the Aston Martin. Can't get onto the throttle. That's bad news, because the Mercedes is now free to attack Statsenko once more. Hosseini has an undercut and underlap. That's an overlap, but on the inside, I suppose. And again, the circuit turns away from him. But now the Audi has got a front-engine GT car in both mirrors. He's got the Aston Martin on one side. He's got the Mercedes on the other. Statsenko fighting for his life in the lead. But Hosseini and Cecilia are side by side. The Aston Martin's going to go through on the inside. On board with the Mercedes. No, he's still there. There's contact. Mercedes just avoids the gravel, 3 wide, off goes Torato. Oh my goodness, the Porsche, the loser, no! The Ferrari, Benito, it all falls into his lap. Haase is going to go through in 3rd, and Dietrich and Franchak go through with him. Well, pick the bones out of that.
So mayhem, effectively at the chicane. Right, so Statsenko leads, Bonito is up to 2nd, Haase is 3rd, David Tonitza is back at the races 4th, Jan-Marcel Dietrich 5th, and Amir Hosseini is down to 6th. Kamil Franchak is 7th, Niels Noyox now suddenly arrives on the scene, 8th. 9th is Simonini, 10th is Suzuka, down to 11th goes Sicilian. Now, not only have we had a shuffling of the order, but as people were having to brake, people dodging left and right, they've all concertinaed up. So suddenly, it's a very close fight for 2nd and back, and it's a different order. But through it all, Statsenko, impregnable at the moment, no matter who it is or what they throw at him, he's able to fend them off.
And a great race for Alex Torato in that Porsche is all undone. He's dropped behind Ezekiel Kompak and Andy Soucek, so he's down in the mid-20s somewhere after just basically having nowhere to go and getting shunted off the track. I sense there might be a little bit of stewarding looking at some of those replays, because the Porsche was definitely not involved in that until suddenly the accident came and found him.
Yeah, Torato's actually gone into the pits and looks to be retiring out the race, if not a very long pit stop. I was actually wrong about Capoccia. He's also retired out the race, bailed straight away, didn't even get back to the pits.
Now,
the other drivers... is Tim Yarshall and Axel Petit also no longer with us.
Oh, right. Okay, so Yarshall, obviously, after serving that drive-through, has gone, do you know what? This is a long 2 hours. I'm not going to get back, so I'm just going to call it a day and get out of the way. And Axel Petit, once he's been lapped, that's not happening for him either, so that's understandable. The way that car went off just looked like a connection issue almost as much as anything else. But here's the replay. We're on board with the Ferrari, aren't we? That's the Porsche in front.
That's Tarata, and he's about to see way out wide Hosseini. So Tarata goes for a gap. Hosseini comes across. He hits Cecilia. Cecilia hits Tarata. It's a pinball effect, isn't it? Bap, bap, bap across the road. Then Hosseini and Cecilia make very solid contact and both spin. And everybody else has to go around them in avoidance. Now we're back live with Tonizza. He's fourth. That is Florian Hasse ahead of him, and they dive down towards turn one. The Ferrari with a slightly tighter line tries to get up the inside as they go through the first corner, but as yet Tonizza has not been able to find the gap. So Hasse fends him off. Enzo Benito then ahead of the pair in second place, and Statsenko still leads the way by, Ben, quite some way. 3.3 seconds now the margin.
All of that fighting was kind of compressing the field, though the pace was slow when they were doing that. Obviously now Statsenko is getting back into hot lap session and just banging the laps and make sure they're fast, and that's allowed him this breathing space over Bonito. But Bonito is fast, and I'm curious as to some of the more intelligent drivers, someone like Niels Naujoks, not necessarily the fastest man out on track, there he is, but he's the kind of guy who will be putting in, like setting himself a benchmark and just matching that benchmark so that he saves fuel and saves tyres. And in the second half of the race, when we see those pit stops play out, I think these kind of guys, Benito and Kamil Franchak and Niels Naujoks, they may come to the top as the guys who have been absolutely hammering it, and Hosseini being one of those. You know, there's no need to make that kind of a move with 90 minutes still to go. They will fade because they've had to taken too much out of their tyres, and they will have to fill totally their fuel again.
I can't see Hosseini surviving to the end of the race after what he just did. First of all, the unsafe rejoin from the off-track area where he hits one car, who then hits another, so he's ruined at least one other driver's race. And then, having not got by the Aston Martin, he torpedoed him in the Casio Triangle of Doom. So if Hosseini doesn't get a drive-through, is it dinner time in the steward's room? I mean, you know, that's I don't. Having seen the way that the stewarding worked for the AM series, obviously I wasn't party to all the silver races, but that would definitely be a drive-through in one of the AM races. 2 AMs in the top 3, I'll just say at this stage.
Right, excellent. And just to echo what Ben said, there's a long way to go, or it's early days yet, and they might be taking life out of their tyres and abusing the fuel load. So, you know, just hold that thought, Martin. Yeah. Right now, however, Enzo Benito could be the man to watch. He's a silver, you know, Martin, because the lead gap is coming down. It's down by 3/10 from a lap ago. And Benito, of course, is a very experienced sim racer. There's his teammate, 95, which is David Tonizza in the FDA Hublot Esports Team Ferrari. Tonizza is on the tail, look at Florian Hasse, and actually crawling all over the back of him. That's released Bonito. The gap for the lead is down by another 10th. Yes, Statsenko still leads, as he has done since the start of the race, but Bonito could well be a big factor before too long.
Now, anybody watching in Sant'Agata, Bolognese, might be very excited to see that Franchak's Lamborghini is up in 7th place. I'm not sure, I know no Lamborghinis finished in the points in the AM category, not sure that they even finished in the top 20 on more than one occasion in the AM category. How well was the Lamborghini represented among the silvers?
We had a handful in terms of number. They didn't have brilliant race results. From memory, Kamil Franchak was one of the stars of the last round at Kyalami in the wet. He chased Cecilia for the bulk of it, but had a moment. I want to say he half spun himself when he was going for the race lead. He fell down the order, so finished 4th or 5th. So
yeah, he was 2nd in Kyalami, according to the points I have anyway. So yeah, yeah,
it done better. It wasn't the most popular brand, and it didn't have the results in either pro nor silver, really.
Yeah, and I wonder again how much of that was down to the choices of track that they had to deal with. Silverstone, Spa, you know, very quick. Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, a little bit nadgery. Barcelona, quite a handling circuit as well. But I mean, you know, real world, Lamborghini is a great car around Barcelona. It's a pretty decent car around Silverstone and Spa. So there are differences, aren't there, between the real and the virtual?
Absolutely. And, you know, Ferrari, you anticipate always to be up there. That didn't have the results across either championship necessarily. The Audis definitely did. And here you have them 1 and 3. Florian Hasse, who's at the moment the cork in the bottle. He's keeping Tonitza and Dietrich's Porsche and Amir Hosseini behind him. There's another brief yellow flag that comes out and goes back in again as Hosseini runs wide. Now, despite the incidents, plural, that Amir Hosseini has had, not only is he still going and seemingly still going strongly, but we aren't aware yet, I don't believe, of any Damocletian penalty hanging over him.
Literally just come as you speak about it, a 10-second stop and go for unsafe rejoin and causing a collision. So basically they were listening to Martin and they just copied that down and put it in the chat.
Never a bad idea. I wish stewards would do it more often. However, can you just go
Saves
down?
time, Martin, doesn't it?
Ben, I know you're at the wrong end of the pit lane. Could you run and find out why Samir Ibrahimi, the AM champion, is in the pits? Is he stopping now with 90 minutes to go? It seems unlikely.
Oh, it's something I can do much faster in the virtual world than in the real world.
I know, so disappointing that.
Yeah, but it's not good for your fitness level, Ben. That's the problem. So,
yeah,
we'll get the news in a moment. Here in the meantime, Florian Hasse ahead of David Tonitza. The two of them accelerating now up towards the Casio Triangle. Jan-Marcel Dietrich next up in the Porsche. 8th he was in the Silver Series this year. But actually, again, they're pairing off, aren't they? The Porsche drops back a little bit. Out wide goes Hasse. And now Tonitza is on his toes. He's going to have the outside line down towards the chicane. It's not going to work. David slot back in behind. Try and get the run coming out of the chicane, which he tries now. He's on the pound, nails his foot to the boards. Behind, look, Hosseini comes up to have a go at Dietrich, but it's all in vain because he's got to serve the stop and go. So he might get a place on the track, but as soon as he's done it, he's going to have to give it back. And then look, 7th, you've got the leading McLaren, Niels Neujoks, becoming more of a factor as this race goes on.
The problem there for Dietrich in the Porsche was, does he fight Hosseini? Does he let him go and then allow him maybe to hold him up and back him up into Neujoks in the McLaren? It's a bit of an invidious position because he will know that Hosseini has a penalty to serve, which he'll have to serve either at the end of this lap or the next. But Hosseini, again, you know, for my money, if you get a penalty, get in the pit lane immediately. Try and leave yourself the longest possible number of minutes and seconds to recover from it. A 10-second stop and go, plus he'll then have to do his fuel stop midway through the race somewhere anyway. Yeah, he's not a factor anymore, is he, Hosseini? So unfortunately, he rather hoist by his over-exuberance in trying to rejoin after that little moment that caused a much bigger moment and ruined a couple of races. For Florian Hasse in the blue Audi, though, the Ferrari is the challenge. It's David Tonitza is all over the back of him and not giving him a moment's respite.
Niels Neujoks, I still think, could well be a factor as this race goes on. I'll get Ben to explain more about him in a moment, but just to do the first part of the story, as you look at Tonitza in 4th place, Neujoks is up into 7th. He's the leading McLaren, but the pace seems to be good. The gaps are not that great between him and those ahead. He's going to gain a place anyway when Amir Hosseini pits. And Ben, Niels Neujoks is a very experienced esports competitor and team manager, isn't he?
Yeah, back in the day, back in the proper day, early 2000s, he was runner-up in a Live for Speed competition where he nearly won a BMW, and the now boss of G2 Esports beat him. And so when they were reunited about 2 years ago now at the Race of Champions in Mexico, suddenly there was a discussion to be had, and Niels has got himself a job back in esports as the team manager of Red Bull Esports Program, which is a partnership between Red Bull Motorsports and G2 as an esports, global esports team. And Niels is super fast as well. I mean, he qualified to be part of the Race of Champions, and there was only 4 places for that. So again, incredibly talented, especially on Assetto Corsa Competizione. But he's a thinking driver. I mean, he's incredibly moany. Every single race there is a protest from him, whether it be ACC or whether it be Race of Champions or anything else he does always complain. But he's that kind of perfectionist, and the guys that he looks after camera in this race as his teammate, you know, they will spend all day working out what the best thing is. And he's got a great YouTube channel actually that you can follow if you want some tips on ACC, specifically on how to get the best out of it. He has an open Discord you can join and get setups from. I've been stealing setups in my series from him. and ultimately a very generous man, but also fiercely competitive. But as I said earlier, a thinking man, and he might be doing something different on strategy here, because this is very important to him.
Well, that's partly why I was raising the topic of Niels Neujoks, because as we've established in the Silver Series, Ben, yes, he is experienced, and yes, he knows how to drive and how to run teams, and yes, he's a perfectionist, should we say, perhaps more than Bodie, but either way, he has high standards, and he's not here just for making up the numbers, is he? So, yeah, don't rule him out. All that experience and the strategy that's going to come into play with, what, an hour and 24 minutes to go just under. Neujoks, the leading McLaren driver in the race, could well be more of a factor, especially as, look, he's in this battle pack and the BOP working clearly as Amir Hosseini peels into the pit lane. So, right, that gets him, for the moment, out of the way, serves the penalty. So Neujoks breaks into the top 6 straight away.
I got your answer, Martin, as well. Samir Ibrahimi got a swapper on through 130R. Overcorrected and spat himself into the wall on the outside. So I think he is another of our Ataris.
Okay, so running too little rear wing probably on that Porsche. What a shame for him. Just as well that Amir Hosseini dived into the pit lane, because as they came into the Casio Triangle last lap, I have no idea what on earth was going on with that Mercedes. Either he completely outbraked himself, or he was having the wildest lunge from a long way back on the car in front, and I think they'll all be glad that he's gone. Watching David Tonizza still continuing to battle with the blue Audi of Florian Haas, and this is the battle for third. Enzo Benito is 3 seconds up the road from these guys, and still closing down our race leader Mikhail Statsenko. Benito in second place in his Ferrari. Tonizza looking to make it 2 Ferraris in the top 3. Is this going to be the 488 GT3's finest hour in the season? Can they both end up on the podium? Are they going to finish with a puncture on the last lap? I mean, who knows what could happen?
There is a long way to go. So an hour and 22
Did you have
minutes.
any of those today? Goodness me. But brilliant end. We won't ruin the ending of the otherwise turgidly dull British Grand Prix for you. I think I may have done. Statsenko, Benito, the 1-2. They are clear of this battle. Haase, Tonizza, the Ferrari. Dietrich in the Porsche. Neujoks not quite there yet in the McLaren, is he? Further back, down in 19th place, Paulo Muir, who finished in 5th position in the AM category. He was both the best McLaren driver and the worst McLaren driver, because he was the
only
correct
McLaren driver.
Yeah, not a car of choice. We had one Aston, we had one McLaren, so it was always easy to tell where the Aston or the McLaren was.
Another McLaren driver worth watching in 11th place, Arthur Camara, who won the Monza Charity Challenge, who was one of the front runners in that Silver Series. The McLaren drivers lost out at the end because they had such a good result in the penultimate race. They went to the last round all ballasted up and just couldn't make any progress. Tonizza, though, now is right on the tail of Florian Haase. This move has been in the post for a good few laps now, and David Tonizza, crawling all over the back of Florian Haase, fancies his chances of getting third place as they go through the snake to the anti-banked curve, then towards Dunlop. But where does Tonizza make that move? The Audi has just got that final nth, hasn't it, over the Ferrari, and Tonizza is going to have to be creative, I think, to get past.
And he's not going to do it up through the S's, is he? You know, nobody passes up through the S's unless the car in front has fallen off. What was interesting, I thought, in the AM series, season opener at Silverstone, to qualify at Silverstone, you could only use the Bentley. The Bentleys just crushed everybody, but thereafter were never really much of a factor. The Audis, even when they had had a really good weekend, first and second in Spa, they still survived the next weekend at the Nürburgring with lots of ballast. Porsche, when they had a 1-2-3 result, died with full maximum ballast on, but the Audis seemed to survive it a little bit better. So there's something in, and that's why it was such a popular choice, I think, in the AM series.
And I think that's what we saw as well within the Silvers and the Pros. You know, the Audi carried the weight very well, whereas other cars didn't. Illustrated, as you say, it was a popular car across both championships, and indeed in this grand finale, as Florian Haase keeps Tonizza at bay, and as he acts as the cork in the bottle, so that queue of cars behind gets greater and greater. Neujoks only 6 tenths back from Dietrich, and the race leaders 11 tenths now between Statsenko and Enzo Benito. It does mean, though, that 19 laps are done by Statsenko, and he's still the race leader. But Bonito, Ben, is really now concentrating that effort on bringing down the gap. And actually, we're probably looking at about 20 more minutes, aren't we, to get us to the 1 hour mark before we need to think about pit stops.
I'll be really interested to see exactly how this plays out. Whether I'd be very surprised if these guys are going to be able to double stint the tyres. I just don't think that's really a possibility, especially around this kind of circuit, which is constantly punishing the tyres. So really, it's down to fuel saving and how much time you sit in the pits whilst that fuel is going in. Obviously, in the SRO Real World Series, there's a mandatory pit stop time, but in Assetto Corsa Competizione, there isn't the ability to put in a stated time for pit stops. Also, we don't have the danger that a real world pit stop has, and the reason really why we have a mandated time in SRO real world pit stops is to make it safe and make sure technology doesn't go crazy and make it expensive. So neither of those factors exist in sim racing, and therefore we do pit stops as fast as we can do pit stops.
Okay,
and therefore,
so Ben, for my ignorance, just explain how a pit stop is going to work and what we're going to see, because we're not going to have virtual mechanics rushing out with virtual tyres and a virtual fuel hose, are we? So how does a pit stop happen? I mean, is it just, you tick a box and that instantly fills up your fuel supply, and you tick another box and it gives you a new set of tyres? How's the mechanism going to work?
So you have a set amount of time for a tyre stop, and that isn't a variable. So you have about 25 seconds to change tyres. That's fixed. Unfortunately, we don't get mechanics jumping out and doing it and visually seeing it. There are platforms that do that, but that's more kind of arcade than this simulation platform. As Tanitsa really on the tail here of Hassa going into the chicane. But Tanitsa's a wily old fox. He won't be doing anything Amir Hosseini-like. And then the amount of fuel depends on how much you've used. So the more fuel, the more time. The less fuel, the less time. And it's as simple as that. And the only other thing that you could choose to do is repair the car if it has damage. It never gets fully repaired if you've got heavy damage. But effectively, I don't think any of these drivers really would be doing that unless they've had really big impacts, in which case they're the kind of guys that are down in the late teens and early 20s and won't be affecting the top of our timesheets.
So what that means is that the pit stop is going to be crucial. It is going to shuffle the order. And not only that, but we've got the lead gap coming down now to less than it has been between these two drivers since Bonito got into the lead. And of course, the one constant in all of this, Martin, has been Ferrari catching Audi. The gap hasn't stabilised, it hasn't grown, it has come down and down and down and down. And now look, Enzo Benito is all over Statsenko like a rash.
We've been here before, though, haven't we, with the Mercedes? Well, his time in the lead is definitely, pretty much over. The Mercedes is all over him. He's, getting alongside at almost every corner. And Statsenko apparently has no rearview mirrors and has no idea any of this is going on, and that he's on borrowed time because he's continuing to dig deep into the time at the bank. Benito is right there now. It's no longer a chase, is it? He's looking for a way by. Florian Haase, though, in third place, is now leading a 7-strong queue behind him, back down to the Aston Martin in ninth place. So it is a long group of cars. And actually, Statsenko's teammate, Giorgio Simonini, is up there right behind Niels Neuhaus in that McLaren. So that's all joined battle as well. Neuhaus no longer the Lanterne Rouge at the back of the queue. But the breakaway, Statsenko versus Benito. Statsenko's got no friends here. He can't back Benito up into anybody. But Benito's got no friends either because there's no traffic in front yet. So, we're almost at the midway point, and anybody who's had problems has retired. There are no laggardly cars to be tripping over.
This is true in the gap point, 2.99 of a second. Haase third. Actually, it's a little bit closer as well. Now, we have got pit stops. Cecilia is in. Petrichenko is in as well, Martin.
Yes, and we're in the top Am McLaren as well. So with 45 minutes done and 75 minutes still to go. That's quite ambitious, I would have thought, but then what do I know? Dietrich in the Porsche just holding off Neuhaus in the Ferrari, but there is the black Audi of Giorgio Simonini, the race leader's teammate. He's looking to get in the action as well, and he's not alone because the second Rover Porsche is right there as well with Herka.
So, interesting that you've got those cars bailing. It might be to try and get out of the traffic, of course. If you're not making progress, we've seen it in real-world racing, you dive in. Now, next question for Ben and his experience of sim racing and of this game in particular. 2 hours, Ben, for the platform. 2 hours of racing for these drivers, both in terms of AM and Silver. 2 hours on the sim, is that a long stint? And behind the question is the fact that you've got Andy Soucek as a real world driver up into 16th. Now, in the real world, you're used to doing a long stint, double or triple stint maybe at Spa. In a race of this length, as it goes on, are the AMs and the Silvers likely to wilt to a degree physically, and the pro drivers have a bit of an advantage, or is that a red herring?
No, I think it's probably the other way around, actually. A lot of these drivers, especially on this particular platform, which is geared towards endurance racing, being a GT3 and now GT4, platform 2, they are used to doing long races. And what's crazy about sim racing, and it's I've heard it many times from real world drivers, and I feel it myself, is that it is way, way more intense driving in the sim than it is in the real world. It's physically more intense in the real world, but it's mentally so much more tiring because you're having to digest all of the information, not just kind of what you see visually. You're kind of having to compute what you should feel but don't feel because you're in a sim with your eyes, and everything's so much more tiring when you're in a simulator. So I think actually our real world drivers may suffer more because of that than the sim races. By the way, that pit stop is about 45 seconds for Jesus Cecilia. Him and Petrenko came out bang on the same amount of time, so there wasn't really much of a difference. I don't think we'll see huge differences in pit stop times across our field.
Well, if they stop on the same lap, they've got the same number of minutes to get through. They're going to use very close to the same amount of fuel. You can tell that they have stopped because now the little orange bar beside the car colour number has gone green. So that's a good indication of who has and who hasn't stopped. We've broken up into 2x2s, haven't we? Statsenko Bonito, that's the 1-2. Haase Tanica, that's the 3-4. Dietrich Neuox, that's the 5-6. Simonini now with Herke, and to break up the pattern camera, and DeSalvo closing in. So that's a sort of 4-car train. Oh, and in fact now they've all closed back up on Tanica's Ferrari as well. He's had a bit of a go somewhere at Haase that we didn't see, I think, because he was right in the back bumper of the Audi, and he's dropped back a couple of spots. So Tanica maybe going to rue that mistake now, because right behind him is the Jan-Marcel Dietrich's Porsche, the first of the Rover Racing cars. And behind him is Nils Neuox in that red, white and black McLaren.
Haase has done a really good job of defending as Amir Hosseini there gets up past Ezequiel Perez Compact for 17th place. So that's a Silver getting past a Pro, both of them in the Mercedes. Amir Hosseini, remember, he's trying to make amends for his stop-go, but then he's got to serve the regulation pit stop anyway. So some of the places he gains, and the time he gains, he's going to lose when he serves the regulation stop. Over the line goes Haase, still third, Tanica fourth, Dietrich is fifth, and Nils Neuox almost hidden there in the low line. McLaren, but now he dives to the inside line, has a long look on the way to the first corner, but is it going to pay off for him? No, no, no. Gets a face full of the 911. So Nils Neuox has to slot back in behind. They in turn are just about 3-4 lengths ahead of Giorgio Simonini and then Chris Herke in 8th place. 9th is off the camera, and off the road there goes the Porsche. So through goes Nils Neuox, and that was Jan-Marcel Dietrich getting it all wrong.
And Giorgio Simonini in the black Audi has snuck by before he recovered his composure. He won't have recovered his tyre grip yet, though, after that little off-track excursion. But yeah, Nils Neuox, turn one is so tempting. It goes on and on and on and on forever, and then suddenly tightens up, and it's very hard to make that pass stick. Down here, Statsenko still holding off Enzo Bonito at the hairpin, sweeping away and starting to climb the hill a little, and Bonito in the Ferrari is right there. He's trying to get his nose inside, but we've seen this lap after lap, and unfortunately, just as he gets in a position, the right-hander at 12 becomes the left-hander, and into Spoon, he's not. Ooh, do you know what? I thought he was going to have a little lunge there.
But we're not done yet, because the pace of the Ferrari is such and the commitment of Bonito is such that he's going to try anywhere he possibly can. Now, the next real opportunity is going to be into the chicane, and to tee that up, it rather depends on how good through the 130R the pair of them will be. They both use the curb. Actually, the Audi doesn't give away too much there. Bonito is about a length and a half back as they break for the Casio Triangle. And now there's the long, fast run past the pits. Now, historically, we've seen the Audi break away here, and it's happened again only fractionally. but the Ferrari is not quite close enough. That means that it's going to have to be a really brave effort by Bonito. Don't brake yet, don't brake yet, keep going, now turn in. But he's not really brought the gap down sufficiently to think about it through the next sequence either.
And you could see Tanizza's Ferrari queuing up a similar move on Florian Haase as they came out of the Casio Triangle for third. But Haase's blue nose is still just in front in the background of your shot. So we're watching two Audi-Ferrari battles, and patently at the moment, if they were released, the Ferraris would leave the Audis behind, but that's all part of it. You've got to out-qualify them if you've got a quicker car and start at the front, and they haven't managed to do that in qualifying. Maybe the Ferrari just not bringing in its tyres quickly as the Audi or as well as the Audi. Maybe they didn't have the qualifying setup quite as spot on as the Audi. Maybe the Ferrari just doesn't respond to that. But certainly in race trim right now, you'd say Enzo Bonito and David Tanizza are the quicker of the top four cars. Statsenko and Florian Haase are just clinging on with every trick in the book.
Got to say, Mikhail Statsenko has driven a superb first 52 minutes. It doesn't matter who it's been behind him, what car, which driver, what's been thrown at him. He has managed to repel every challenge. He's like the last bloke at the bar in a brawl. It doesn't matter who hits him, he's still standing at the end of the night and he hasn't spilt his drink. He is at the moment utterly impregnable. He's there in the race lead. Enzo Bonito is behind him. Now, the other thing that's going to be interesting now, Martin, is who blinks first in terms of the pit stops, because that could be the only way actually the lead changes, given the way that Audi gets wider and wider. It's still hanging on to the lead. Again, look, Bonito really good through 130R, goes to the outside line, runs out of road, wrong line, slots back in behind, try again in another lap.
This is Senna in Monaco holding off in a dog-slow McLaren, the electrifyingly quick Nigel Mansell's Williams Renault, isn't it? Yeah, it's one thing being quick, but finding the speed at the right place where there's room to get by is a very different thing. Of course, in Monaco there isn't. Here there is, but the Audi, I mean, here again, as you come out of turn two, the Audi just canters away up the hill, and he sort of hasn't caught it before they get to the Degner curve. So it's a really, really tough ask. The Audi's low speed pickup mid to exit seems to be really good compared to the Ferrari, and the Ferrari, a little bit like the Bentley does, kind of by the end of the straight has really got his skirts picked up and is cantering along nicely and reeling you in, but it's all a little bit too little too late, and now he's going to pass him because I've just said that.
Well, I was just going to say, to save some of your blushes, this is where the move starts. Halfway around the lap, you've got those fast flowing sections done. Then you get to the Degner curve, and that seems to be where the Ferrari starts to creep back into the mix. Look, the gap is down on this section of the circuit. So it's from here on in that Enzo Bonito needs to start planning the move. They're back on the power now, coming out of the hairpin up towards Spoon Curve, and that in turn takes you along the back stretch, speed building, into 130R, into Casio Triangle. So from here on in, Bonito cannot afford to make a mistake. He's got to be quick through Spoon Curve. He's a little bit neater, only marginally, but he doesn't run quite as wide, as does the Audi ahead of Statsenko. And again, look, Statsenko clambers up the curb on exit. Now, this is where the Ferrari starts to nibble away at that gap. Further back, there's Haase third, Tanizza fourth. Niels Neujoks is there in fifth place as they come up towards Casio Triangle. But what's going on ahead of them is that the lead gap is coming down and down, 0.4 of a second still. There goes Haase. Now, what about Neujoks? He is all over the back of David Tanizza for that fourth place as they make the run now into the braking zone for Casio Triangle. Up front, though, Statsenko versus Bonito as they head towards the line. And Statsenko seemingly is still able to repel the challenge of that Ferrari. But no, Bonito into the pit lane. So Enzo Bonito, that answers one question. He blinks first. So the next stint is going to have to be 65 minutes, give or take. And so from second place into the pits comes Bonito.
Now, you were talking about who's going to blink first and go in and get out of traffic. And I was thinking, I wonder who's got the pit lane window to do it. Who's got the fuel tank capacity that will allow them to go in with 5 minutes or 6 minutes plus the final hour to go. And the question is, if you go in too early, can you somehow featherfoot your way around the last couple of laps to make the fumes last? Well, we'll find out, won't we? David Tanizza in third then is not released from behind Florian Haase, as we were watching the lead pair with Statsenko holding off the first of the Ferraris, I was thinking, well, the battle behind will be an absolute mirror image, and so it is, but with the added advantage in this one that you've got the McLaren waiting to pick the bones off this carcass. But again, from here, Tonitza is going to, is he going to come in this lap, or is he just going to stick to his task? You saw that the Audi came in as well. Giorgio Simonini came in from the queue, and a little further back, David Perrell also stopped in his Pro Class Ferrari. Andy Suchik now into the top 10, Ezekiel Kompak in 11th, because that means that the other Mercedes has stopped as well, hasn't it? That who picked up the penalty earlier on.
Amir Hosseini is 9th.
Hosseini. Oh no, he hasn't.
He's yet to serve the regulation stop. He's done the penalty stop, but no other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So order shuffles, and that now means Florian Hauser gets up into 2nd ahead of Tonitza in 3rd, Niels Neujoks 4th, and that's the battle you're watching. 5th is Chris Hürker, who's now upholding Porsche honour after Jan Marcel Dietrich had his off and went down into 18th place. Jesus Cecilia 17th after his earlier spin. David Perrell 13th. Coach Dave, he's a man to watch. Now, do we get any more pit stops? Yes, in comes Hauser, in comes Tonitza. So now, Ben, that releases Niels Neujoks, doesn't it, for a couple of laps? He's going to get up into 2nd, and also the leader is in as well. So now, with 63 minutes on the clock, Ben, you're going to be busy in the pit lane.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to see.
Let's just send out the back having a cup of tea in one of the team awnings.
Oh, there's a couple of Italians for coffee, isn't there?
So nothing changes in the virtual world, does it?
Yeah, the cars go up on the jacks, and then you don't really see much more, but they are clearly getting new boots because the lap times when they come out are very, very good after 2 laps. And I guess it depends on how much fuel they use. Ultimately, the lap time, including the lap in, is about 3 minutes. So let's see when these guys who are in the pits right now filter out. I'm watching on board with Enzo Benito. You can see him from the exterior shot, and he would be the man to pick up time if he's managed to do some kind of undercut. This is his first flying full lap, and he's got 4 cars sitting in pit lane. Is he going to take the race lead?
Well, the real question for me is how quick is the McLaren that leads now going to be, because it's been released, and can he stay out long enough to capitalise from it? Can he spend, Niels Neujoks, another 4 or 5 minutes out front, another 2 or 3 laps of clear road to give himself that advantage on empty tanks, if you like, to somehow maybe make a pit stop and come back out in the top 3. Niels Neujoks is the race leader, and the highest of the stopped cars is in 7th place. That's 969, Patrick Selva's McLaren.
Yeah, and Patrick Selva has kind of come out of nowhere, hasn't he? He was the Silverstone winner in the Silver Series, dominated the race with battles going on behind him. Florian Hauser has got a stop-go penalty look. Number 67, you can see him tumbling down the order. Ben, what do we know about that stop-go for Florian Hauser, if anything?
I'm thinking it might be speeding in the pit lane because he'd just come out the pits.
Okay.
That was my thinking. That's about the only thing that can. I'm not sure. There we go. Okay, so it has sorted itself out. Statsenko is the best of our stock cars. There he is, ahead of Benito. So Benito didn't gain any advantage. The Aston Martin, we haven't spoken about that for a long while. He's there in 3rd position. He was invisible, wasn't he, for a long while? But his early stop has put him back into the frame.
Yeah, after that spin, Cecilia was the one of the first in, wasn't he? A very early stopper. It's bought him a whole load of places. Chris Hürker's Porsche has just gone in. Statsenko, Bonito and Cecilia, the top 3. And Jan Marcel Dietrich is the 4th of the stoppers. Now, he's also been able to fight back, having been off the road. So it's going to be fascinating to see where Neujoks and Camera slot back in, because they're leaving it very late. This could either be inspired or it could go horribly wrong.
Well, don't forget, Jan Marcel Dietrich only had that slight off. It wasn't his Porsche that got thumped off in the 3-car pileup. He only had that,
wasn't it?
So he lost a couple of spots, but he's still very much in top 10 contention. So of the stoppers, Hooker's come out in front of Statsenko.
And that gives him the race lead, doesn't it, in real terms? So Chris Hürker, by leaving it late, has managed to jump everybody. That will give Neujoks and Camera and Hosseini renewed optimism as well, that they might be able to come out ahead, especially now if Hürker goes defensive, because he's going to slow the pace of the race down.
But Hosseini's 30 seconds behind Neuox. Surely he can't come out in any kind of top 10 position from there, given how close, given how relentless the pace is. As Ben said, you know, these guys are just nailing the laps. It's like watching dart players, 180, 180, 180.
We've also got a drive-through for Kamil Franchak in the Lamborghini, I'm afraid to say. So in 18th place, he is going to be further down the order. I think, just going back to your darts analogy, at this circuit it's meant to be 130, 130, 130. The name of the corner. Yeah, right. Now,
that's it, ladies and gentlemen. He's here all week.
Yes, tell your friend.
If you don't laugh, he sings.
Neuox 3.8 seconds clear of Alpha Camera. So it is McLaren's 1 and 2, and Niels Neuox will know exactly what to do as we go into the second half of the race in order to try and keep that margin. Yes, Martin?
Two things. First of all, McLaren fans are clearly taking a little snapshot of that leaderboard. And secondly, Ben, maybe you can tell us, since you are deeply enmeshed in the platform, what are the lap times like for Neuox on his last lap compared to fresh-tired but full of fuel Statsenko and Hurka?
Okay, so Neuox is still doing 2:001s, which is just amazing. We've seen this before in Monza, remember, when he was post-penalty just banging in the laps, and he was faster than every single person out there, which is just incredible. He's still being able to do that. Camera is about half a second slower, as we've got Hurka coming into the pits for a drive-through penalty. I wonder what that's for. I need to do some more digging on that one.
For him to get the lead, maybe he was speeding in the pit lane or something like that. Pit lane infringement maybe to jump the leader. Sorry, Ben, go on.
But Statsenko 2 minutes 9, Benito 2 minutes 0.7. So they are still lapping full, obviously, of fuel, but with better tyres, about 5 to 6 tenths of a second slower than Neuox, who is increasing his advantage. So an amazing turn of speed. Hosseini's in the 59s right now.
And very tight contact. Finally, Florian Haase gets turned around by the Ferrari. Oh, that was very clumsy, and somebody else got involved as Haase tried to dive into the pit lane. At least I assume that was Haase's car rather than his teammate.
Yes, that was a replay.
No, that was a replay. So who made contact with Florian Haase then? Because Haase has... was he trying to come in there for a penalty, to serve his penalty?
No, this was before the penalty, so I think he's been given a penalty for that.
For that, but he was hit from behind. Unless he's selected reverse, I'm not sure how that comes to be his fault. That's generally not the way of it. However, Niels Neuox still leading. Neuox and Camera, the McLaren 1-2. Hosseini up to third in the Mercedes. That really is quite a big recovery from a 10-second stop and go early in the race, isn't it? Andy Soucek fourth, Ezekiel Compact fifth, but unless they can go another hour without stopping, those are not going to be realistic positions. So looking here at Mikhail Statsenko, who should, or will he, they're lapping 2.5 seconds a lap quicker than they are, so...
McLaren's leaving the pits now.
Right, here comes Statsenko then, so... onto the pit straight comes the Audi. Can it get its lead back on the road? And Statsenko is taking Bonito and Sicilia with him. Down towards the first corner they go. Where is the McLaren? There is Niels Neuox. So he comes out just ahead. There's only a gnat's crotchet in it, but it's the McLaren there that on the pit stops has jumped into the lead. Statsenko second, Bonito third. This was what we were discussing 20 minutes or so ago. Niels Neuox using his huge experience, and he's used it to very good effect. He leads into the second hour of the race.
Now, see, that is remarkable patience to know that you've got speed in the car that you can't use, and just wait and wait and wait until there is an empty track. And that is just, you know, again, people from the real world like us are going, well, you know, but it is only a computer game, yada, yada, yada. After the first race in Monza, what was John saying? He said, I don't care if they're real cars or not real cars, they're real people racing real people.
Right. Yeah.
And that's exactly the same thing, you know. The fact that the cars are not physical, they're virtual, doesn't change the drivers. So Niels Neuox, that is just remarkable patience and knowledge of the car as well, that he can go longer, that he can go nearly 10 minutes longer than the Audi and still use that pace.
Well, now we are teed up, aren't we, for the second sprint race, if you like. The next 55 minutes to take you to the checkered flag. We start with, but yet to stop, Ezequiel Perez Compact leading. Discount him because he will drop down the order. So we have a new race leader. The lead only ever changed on pit stops, and it's Niels Neujoks then who's come out ahead, only just of Mikhail Statsenko. So it's a silver leading an AM, finally. Enzo Benito is third, still staring at the back of the Audi, but the problem is he's a place lower down than he used to be. Fourth is Jesus Cecilia, back at the races. Jan-Marcel Dietrich, despite rally crossing, is there in fifth. Sixth is Giorgio Simonini. Seventh is the McLaren of Yuri Petrochenko. Eighth is Giovanni Di Salvo's Lamborghini. Ninth is Patrick Selva. And 10th is David Tonitza. And I'm saying that because we know that Compact has yet to stop. So in real terms, that is your top 10. And the gap between the top two is 0.4 of a second. Now, something else that we haven't yet seen, what we are going to do for the next few laps, is watch Statsenko chase somebody. The first hour he only had to defend. Built a gap, lost the lead in terms of the time, but he was always able to fend off the car behind, positioning the car to keep the advantage. Now he's got to do the chasing and a bit of overtaking. This is going to be fascinating.
It is, and the race that he won in the AM Series, which was at Spa in the driving rain, he was a long way clear. A long way clear. And the only man who got close to his pace spun off from second place and gave himself a bit of a fright, and then reined his neck in a little bit and settled for second rather than binning it in appalling conditions. So haven't seen him carve his way through the field. Of course, he doesn't have to carve his way through the field. He only has to find a little bit more than one car, but that one car will have 10-minute fresher tyres by the end of the race and is in fresh air, as Statsenko, for the first time in this race, is in turbulent air behind Neujoks. Of course, Ezequiel Compact, he's done an hour and 7 minutes already. I don't know how he's done that in the Mercedes, but he is still out front, so yeah, we're waiting for him to pit. And at the moment, watching Petrochenko.
Interesting one here from Florian Hasser, who's decided to retire out of the race. He got the drive-through penalty, as we suspected, for speeding in the pit lane. However, he was shunted into the pit lane by David Tonitza, and that is how he ended up overspeeding. Not because he went too fast into it, but he was helped into the pit lane by Tonitza. And then obviously we saw the contact one lap later. The stewards have decided that is a racing incident between the two of them at the chicane. But the stewards will now be looking to see whether Tonitza actually did shunt into the back of Florian Hasser, perhaps by being surprised by the AM's mistake, maybe. But either way, Hasser's not very happy on the chat.
No, I bet he isn't. We've just seen the drive-through being served by Giovanni Di Salva's Lamborghini. Again, all the praise we gave for the Lamborghini being in the top 10 has undone his race, so sorry about that, Giovanni. And Florian Hasser, yes, I'm not... He did look, I mean, in the replay, it did look like he got shunted from behind, and clearly that's exactly what had happened, but it's the lead up to that that's a little bit of a shame. Palamuya still in the pit lane, so he has obviously had a problem and retired as well.
Yeah, he's been there for a while, hasn't he? The other disappointment, sadly, is David Perrell, who's had a troublesome race, and he's down in 21st position as still Compact leads on the road. Out wide over the curb, coming out of the Degner curve there, was David Tonitza, so he's running in 10th place on the road, and he's still crawling all over the back of Patrick Selva, one of the stars of the Silver Series this year. Patrick Selva, the Silverstone winner, and he's keeping that Ferrari at bay right now as they power their way around the lap. Patrick Selva, runner-up in the Silver Series in the championship. 51 minutes still on the clock. Amazing that Compact is still yet to serve the pit stop.
And we haven't seen him, Compact, release his drop tanks yet, which is clearly how he's going, you know, because when did the Mercedes come in? It was like after 45 minutes, Hosseini's Mercedes, and yet we're now 70 minutes into the race, and Compact is still going on that elderly tank of gas. I mean, I don't know how few fumes there are, how many plug leads he's taken off to keep it running, but that's astonishing. It is astonishing.
Right,
well,
Tonitza,
he's running map 2 rather than the rest of the field. You might remember this from Monza, where some of the drivers had to use a different engine map to make the race without a pit stop. and Compact is using map 2 in his Mercedes. So I think that is allowing, looking at the other drivers, nobody else is doing that. That's allowing him to go so much longer. He's not particularly fast with it, but it is allowing him to stretch this stint much longer, which means, okay, a big fuel fill when he does stop, but he'll be able to push harder on those second set of tyres.
And that's something we did see at Monza, wasn't it? The likes of Niels Neujoks in, for that race, a Mercedes, went on and on and on and on and was good for fuel, even though he was going what seemed to be flat out, and others were going at a more relaxed pace. But the Mercedes there, with that different map, did seem to be able to go much longer, much faster.
And although Compact's on map 2, he wasn't that much slower than Andy Suchak. I mean, they were first and second in class, and so Suchak clearly on map 1. Looking a little further back down the order, there is David Perrell, and he is in third of the pro drivers.
Yeah, the South African there on the back of Ufuk Baba in the mighty BMW M6 then as they come across the line. So this is for 20th place you're looking at. And the BMW is about to come under real attack there. The Ferrari has a look to the inside line, but to no avail. David Perrell slots back in behind, but there, look, way out wide goes the BMW. David Perrell says, thank you very much. The door is open for him, and he breezes on by up into 20th place. David Perrell, the man behind the Coach Dave Academy. Racer in his early days, ran out of money, went back to South Africa, built up a business, got back involved in the sport through sim racing. That in turn brought him back into real world racing. It brought him back into European racing, and a very good enthusiast. As drama at the chicane, pitches around Bonito. He made his move against Statsenko. Contact, the Ferrari spins, and that throws him down the order. So, out of all of that, Niels Neujoks will lead Statsenko, but up into third is going to come Thesilia now in the Aston Martin.
Well, we've been here before, haven't we? But with slightly different position for Niels Neujoks, as he was closing in on that queue early in the race when Statsenko was the race leader. Neujoks was down in 7th, 8th position, has worked his way all the way through and used some very good strategy to take the lead. Big mistake from Enzo Benito, though, has cost him. And here's the 95 Ferrari. David Tanitsa still behind Selva's McLaren. And Petrichenko just in front of him, so he may get by the 969, but there'll be another McLaren further up the road. If he's freed and able to use any of that pace, he can probably see it in the not too distant future. Compact still up front with only almost half an hour after some of our drivers stop for fuel. He's still going. He does know that there's a mandatory pit stop, doesn't he? He's not just going on fairy juice and Oofle dust.
It's like children's games where you can buy cheats to
yes.
get to more levels.
Oh,
he's found the cheat code for more fuel, clearly. It's remarkable, it really is.
Left, down, up,
That's
right,
it,
right.
that's the one.
Yeah,
just a thought about Statsenko. I mean, considering the race that he's driven, it's impressive enough in isolation. Just look at that leaderboard. Look where all the other AMs are. They're nowhere. Yeah. There is Statsenko upholding their honour in fine style, getting a replay here of earlier dramas. This was the incident at the chicane, wasn't it? Look, Benito dives up the inside. There's half a gap. The gap closes. Bang. And the biter bit there, the Ferrari is the one that gets turned around.
Ooh, I tell you what, Statsenko was lucky to survive that. If you want to see lucky to survive, go and look for the first lap crash at Spa in the AM series, because it's like he was Teflon coated there. He just avoided the leader coming back off the Armco and smiting him in the door. But that was probably contact with the Ferrari there, so he just got away with that by the skin of his teeth. He's still in second. Niels Neujoks still the race leader. And we are still working on the tail of Selva's McLaren. Here we go, Tanitsa with a run. Selva painted to the right-hand side of the track. And that means Tanitsa's going to have to try and go the long way, the brave way around the outside, the trusting way. Yes, just never trust a McLaren on the inside of you down into turn 1 in Suzuka. That would be a rule for life, I think. Particularly if you're a Ferrari driver.
I was going to say, many a Ferrari driver would back you up. Yeah, absolutely. So,
well, one, anyway.
Maybe Tanitsa slots back in behind. Find a better Ferrari-friendly corner, perhaps. 45 minutes of this race to go then. It's not for points, it's for pride. And it's given a very lively race thus far, and we're not done yet. 3.3 seconds is the margin up front between Neujoks and Statsenko. 1.4 seconds back is Cecilia. Right, let's get Ben busy in the pit lane once again. Out of that leading gaggle, Ben, Neujoch, Statsenko, Cecilia and Dietrich in the Porsche, what are we looking at in terms of lap times? Is anybody lapping quicker, anybody slower, gaps coming down, gaps opening up? What's the pattern, if any, within that leading group?
They're all in the early 2 minutes and kind of pacing themselves in that sense. It's interesting to watch the lap times, because in the 1 hour sprints, we saw the tyres hold on for a lot longer and then kind of plummet. Here, we're seeing 1 or 2 really good laps, and then they are instantly about half a second slower. So the way that these guys have set their car up for this 2 hour race is certainly different to what we saw for the 1 hour races. Neujoch and Dietrich last lap through were the two that were slightly faster than the others, but only by a couple of tenths. And of course, that will change again on this next lap. Does feel like they are the two that are slightly slower, though, on this second stint. And actually, seeing that BMW, we haven't had a chance really to see that very much, but does bring me to 2 really cool esports stories over the last couple of weeks. Because, of course, the first round of the real world SRO GT World Challenge was at Imola last weekend. And in the Pro-Ams, we had a professional sim racer take, I think, race 1 victory. Cem Bulutbashi was driving the all-Turkish BMW and was able to take at least pole position, if not victory. And Cem is a professional Red Bull esports driver. So that's pretty cool. And then today, in the British GT Championship, as we see a replay there just a second ago, we've seen James Baldwin, who is an incredibly good ACC driver, take the win in the first race of British GT alongside Michael O'Brien, who did very well here in the SRO esports series. We didn't see James in it, but first ever race for James Baldwin, but many years of karting and sim racing. And he goes out and wins British GT on his first attempt. I think that proves just what a breeding ground this can be.
Absolutely, yes. Robert Barzi was the winner of the Formula Renault esports series in lockdown as well, wasn't he? He qualified on pole for his stint, if you like, the qualifying session for the race he started in the BMW, and he led all the way, Ben. It was his co-driver that wasn't quite so quick, so the result didn't really reflect his pace. But yeah, I mean, he was mighty in qualifying and unstoppable in his stint. So yeah, it is fascinating to see the ability that the sim racers have got. And those older broadcasters amongst us have learnt a lot about sim racing over the last few months, haven't we? And a lot of new names have cropped up. But this whole lockdown period and the explosion of championships has taken this to a whole new audience. And it's not just the driver's ability, I think, that's hit home. It's also what the graphics are like and the realism of what we're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Apart from Ezekiel Compank, obviously.
Oh, is he still going?
He's in the
pits now.
Oh, he is in the pits. There you go. Oh, well, yeah, 42 minutes left. No wonder he's run out of fuel. Some people stop with 42 minutes of the race gone, not remaining. He has gone 40 minutes longer than some of our earlier pit stoppers. Map 2 is clearly not a bad... can he now turn it onto map 1 and just gas it up? Because he could have... You know, that's like turbo overboost, isn't it? In
I'll have a look.
Glory days. My dad tells me.
Clearly, virtual vapors are better than real vapors. You can go further on a virtual vapor. This battle is a really good one between Selva and Tunitsa, isn't it, for what's now 8th place. You can see how far down the order Compank will drop as a consequence of the pit stop. Falls back behind Amir Hosseini, which is roughly where he was squabbling before he came in. So Neujoch to Statsenko, 3.9 seconds. Now remember, when they came out of the pits, there was only really a length between them. And what you've seen, therefore, is that Neujoch has extended that gap over the last few laps.
Yeah, in 15 minutes, he's found nearly 4 seconds. So, yeah, it was clear that the McLaren had the pace, the way that he was able to work his way up the order, not just the driver ability, but some pace as well. And Statsenko, obviously 1.2 seconds ahead of the Aston Martin. Interesting to see top six has 5 different brands in it. You've got Aston, McLaren, Audi, Aston Martin, Porsche, a second Audi of Simonini, and then the Ferrari of Benito. So there is a decent spread there, isn't it? Lexus not getting much of a look in. Lamborghini, having been highlighted by me, is doing quite well, obviously having a disaster thereafter, and that's apologies for that again. But yeah, again, as we see so often, BOP, although everybody has a bad word to say for it, is the only thing that makes this racing achievable, because it mixes such different propositions in terms of how the car is built and laid out and how they work, and comes up with a very level playing field.
Well, Niels Neujoks right now is 3.8 seconds clear of Michael Statsenko, with Jesus Cecilia third, Jan-Marcel Dietrich fourth, Giorgio Simonini fifth, Enzo Benito is in sixth place, seventh. There, coming towards us, Yuri Petrochenko. Behind him in eighth place is Patrick Selva. David Tunitsa is ninth, and Arthur Camara is in 10th place. He was a very loquacious guest in the pit lane, the SRO podcast that we ran during lockdown, and Arthur Camara, who has real aspirations to go into real world racing, but he's very realistic. He doesn't have the money to do it. So unless somebody waves the golden ticket at him, this is how he will enjoy his motor racing. And Arthur Camara was a race winner in that charity challenge. He was a race winner within the Silver Series, within the championship itself. He's a little bit far away from the pecking order in 10th place, but you never know, if dramas befall others up the road, he might gain a spot or two back before the very end. Just under 40 minutes to go now.
Well, I was going to say that the Selva-Tunitsa battle is catching Petrochenko, but Camara is closing in on them as well. So that little group looks like it could well clear up. Just ahead of Eamon Murphy, this is Garcia in the Bentley. That's the lead Bentley, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're not particularly well suited here to Suzuka, clearly, because it's taking a long while to get up towards a top 10 spot. I'm not sure where did he start on the grid? 18th place, Garcia.
And have a look behind them, because Damir Hosseini going like a train, reeling them in. He's only half a second back as well. David Tunitsa, who flattered to deceive a little bit really in the Silver Series, he came with this good track record, but the results never really gelled for him. He is still crawling all over the back of Selva. Tunitsa sixth in the championship, Selva second. Patrick Selva keeping him at bay. He wasn't the gold medalist, Patrick, he was the silver medalist.
Been a long day, eh, David?
It has, you're not wrong there, Ben. You're not wrong at all.
I was
38 minutes to go.
I was about to praise the use of loquacious, but the tumbleweed for that joke, I'm afraid, completely undoes any good work there.
What a flag, our friend Compac, down in 19th position. He has turned it up to map 1 now, and really, really interesting to see the pace that he's got. He's just coming around the spoon curve now. He's already 1.5 seconds up on his best lap that he's done so far in the race. So that kind of proves how much time he was losing using map 2, but he is only, 2 seconds behind Andy Susek? So in the battle for our pro drivers, and you know, credit to them for sticking around. There's not many of them that decided to do this because they probably knew that they were going to not be at the head of the field, but Compac and Susek have been here and they are about to provide us with a great battle for the pro honours. Compac 2 seconds to the good as he comes across the line on this first lap, full of fuel, new tyres, but the first time he's used map 1 all race.
It's sort of a shame that it's British Grand Prix weekend, not for Louis Delatraz, who finished in 3rd place in this morning's Formula 2 sprint race and was jolly happy with his 2nd podium of the season, because he's doing his real day job. But it would have been lovely to see him here as well and see how the pro champion might perhaps have stacked up against some of the silver drivers and, of course, our top AM. One AM in the top 3 at the moment, we're saying.
Indeed, yes. It's interesting how the other AMs have dwindled. Yes.
Being shunted out by some of the silvers, largely.
Bullying, is that what you reckon?
Yeah.
Well, Statsenko has been a real star. Joking apart, I mean, to do what he did in the first hour of the race and to still be just about in contention and really be the trailblazer for the AM Championship, I think he's done an outstanding job. There is 150. That is the Audi of Giorgio Simonini. Simonini making his way now out of the chicane. He was 12th equal with Enzo Benito within that Silver Series this year, and behind Simonini is Enzo Benito. The gap is half a second between them. They're not that far adrift either. Look at Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Rover Racing coloured Porsche as the almost stealth-like Audi turns its way through the first corner and fends off to the tune of half a second the Ferrari of Benito.
Just as well we weren't starting at 6 p.m. local time, otherwise that would be the invisible Audi by now, wouldn't it? An hour and a half in, it would be pitch black. You can see the sort of golden twilight haze has left the sky, and the mist is starting to settle as well here at Suzuka. Niels Neujoks still the race leader, pulling away happily from Michal Statsenko. But Statsenko, he looks like he's doing a pretty decent job, doesn't he? I mean, Neujoks is the only guy really who is pulling any ground on him. Cecilia closing in slowly from behind. He's got the gap down to under a second now in the Aston Martin in third place. And Dietrich Simonini in the black Audi and Benito, that's 4, 5, 6, but they're about 2.5 seconds away from the battle for the podium. However, Statsenko's already survived one brutal assault in the Casio triangle, so there's nothing to say that another one might not come somewhere in that battle again.
It's true. I mean, Cecilia is not a dirty driver, far from it, but he's certainly a committed driver, the Spanish winner of the Silver Series, and if he feels he's got a chance to challenge, makes you wonder what he could have done but for that spin early on with the initial contact where he was turned around. But Cecilia still there, still fighting, but Niels Neujoks having probably, it's fair to say, Ben, the best driver we've seen from him really since that Monza Charity Challenge, where he was unlucky because he got involved in contact with Hosseini and was penalised, and then he didn't really sparkle in the Silver Series in terms of the championship rounds, did he?
I think that was very much down to the kind of the way that the success ballast worked for the McLaren. You know, they had such great performances in some events and then were so heavily ballasted that they couldn't do anything in the other events. And I don't know, if they were all kind of working together, I think they might have played the whole series slightly differently to make sure they didn't get too much ballast. You know, if there's only one Audi in the race and it wins the race, it only takes the ballast for the victory. Whereas when you had so many McLarens and they did a 1, 2, 3, that just put so much weight onto the car for the next race, you couldn't do anything with it. And I think that was kind of the problem. A lot of the teams have got to a point where they knew which the best car was for the overall series, chose the McLaren, and ended up kind of almost tripping over themselves.
It would have helped Neujoks if, when the McLaren was the winning car, he was in the one that was doing the winning.
Well, there is that, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, his results were a little up and down. A 6th, a 12th, a 38th, a 3rd, a 14th. The consistency wasn't there, even if occasional lap speed was. But that said, Niels Neujoks did come good for a podium at Barcelona, like we say.
But that was his only podium, whereas Patrick Selva and Artur Camara's his own teammate. They had a win in the second place apiece when the McLaren was the kit to have. So if it's the old story, isn't it? You know, if you've got a car that can win, for God's sake, win. If you haven't, take the points. But if a McLaren is going to be 1-2, you want to be at least one of those two, not somewhere else that's out of the points or down the order. So, yeah, winning at the beginning in the charity race and potentially winning here at the end in the grand finale hasn't necessarily helped his championship at all. But he's started and ended the season well.
But interesting, if you're going to win one race, make it the grand finale, make it that 2-hour race, something different, because this is the one that has perhaps had more in it. Yes, it's longer, but we've had the pit stop element. You know, it's more than just a flat-out sprint. There's a little bit more strategy to go into it, as Ben was saying early on. Now, Neujoks has crossed the line. The gap is down by a whisker. It's down to 4.2 seconds. Is this going to be a consistent push from Statsenko, or do we think Neujoks has got the measure of him? As also here further down, 7th, 8th and 9th have all got themselves together now. 2 more McLarens, Petrichenko and Selva, with David Tonizza's Ferrari right there behind.
And Camara not too far behind either. I'm not sure that Camara's closing very quickly, but he is closing slightly. Here is our pro leader, Andy Soucek, in the K-Pax Bentley. Ezekiel Kompank in second, David Perrell third. They're all 18th, 19th, 20th, sort of running nose to tail-ish on the road, although there are gaps between them. And of course the other pro who couldn't make it through because he had problems with his kit was Romain Monti. So we're down to 3 pro drivers, but they are in the top 20 in what was a pretty busy and professional field.
This is your second place battle, and this is why the lead gap has gone up, because Mikhail Statsenko is having to work hard to defend from Jesus Cecilia. That means therefore that he's taking the slower lines. It means that Neujoks is getting away. This is great news for the race leader, but can that Aston Martin find a way by? And were it to do so, could it go after the leading McLaren? The clock ticks down. We're almost into the final quarter of the race, but again the Audi just seems to have the tiniest advantage over the Aston.
The good news for the Aston driver is they are within 5 seconds of the leader. Niels Neujoks has not opened up a 13-second margin, which would be sort of unachievable in half an hour. He's only 5 seconds away. Now, if you can't lap half a second a lap quicker than him, only 5 seconds might as well be 30 seconds. But Yeah, Sicilia's first got to get by Statsenko, and as history has taught us, that may not be as easy as saying it.
No, that Audi is a resilient car, as we have seen. I mean, Ben has been explaining in previous rounds of the championship about damage that you can pick up within the platform. But actually, Ben, despite the contact, despite the challenges offered by other drivers against Statsenko's car, it doesn't seem to have been hobbled by any of the contact, does it?
Anything before the pit stop could have been fixed in the pit stop, but honestly, he didn't lose a huge amount of time to Benito when they pitted, so I'd be surprised if he took that option. Same deal kind of with Sicilia's car, because that suffered contact earlier in the race, didn't it?
Yeah.
So certainly, by looking at the lap times, no way these cars are anywhere other than at their absolute maximum speed. Although Naujok's is 0.3 of a second faster than anybody else. So Naujok's is doing exactly what he did in Monza. He's driving a pace that nobody else can get anywhere near to.
And here comes David Tonizza in the Ferrari in 9th place. All over the back of Selva. Petrichenko is there as well, holding up the McLaren. The McLaren in front of the Ferrari Selva's been in clear air for half an hour, but now he's in turbulent air. Suddenly his front end isn't going to be quite as sharp. His brakes are going to start to get very hot. His engine temperature will start to climb. Petrichenko is not being his friend here by being right in front of him. Of course, Petrichenko would rather be right up behind Enzo Benito, but doesn't seem to have the pace in his McLaren to do so. These guys are 8 seconds behind the back of the queue with Dietrich, Simonini and Benito. Well, they're 5 seconds behind them at the very least. So this is now not a two-way battle between Tonizza's Ferrari and Selva's McLaren in front. It is now a four-way battle with one Ferrari and 3 McLarens. And actually the person looking most likely to make the move is Patrick Selva, the Silver Series runner-up, who is trying to put the move in to get ahead of Petrichenko for 7th, but actually probably to get away from the Ferrari as much as anything else.
And Arthur Camara is also well worth watching because he's been chipping away. He's brought that gap down and down and down, and now he is right there. So Petrichenko 7th, fires the gun, comes off the last corner, over the line. He leads this battle pack. But now let's focus on Camara because he has been quick enough to gain ground and he's right there on the back of the Ferrari of Tonizza as they turn into turn 1. What can he do to gain more ground before the end?
4th.
Remember also, Petrichenko was the first of our pit stoppers along with Sicilia. They came in, after 40 minutes? So they've got to do a little bit of preservation, both tyres and fuel, to get to the end. And maybe that's why we're seeing Petrichenko with this little queue behind him.
Yes, that I would definitely go with that as an option. Were Sicilia not doing so well in catching Statsenko for 2nd place. He seems to be ignoring that, and maybe he'll take jam now and pay for it later with degraded tyres and having to feather foot his way through. Here is Simonini in the black Audi, Enzo Benito right behind him. Giorgio Simonini hanging on still. Again, the Audi gets off the corner from the earliest part of the pickup on the mid-corner to the exit. The Audi just seems to get half a step on everybody, and that is really hard to counteract. It's great being fast into the apex, but if your rival is quicker off the apex to the corner exit, you play catch-up down every straight. They're not too far behind Dietrich's Porsche, so Jan-Marcel Dietrich may still play a part in this because Simonini's just getting a little bit of a toe from him. Not quite as much as Benito's getting off the Audi, but it still helps to try and fight off the Ferrari.
So down to the Casio triangle comes the fight for 5th place then. Look back from Simonini's Audi. Enzo Benito in that Ferrari 488 GT3 crawling all over the back of him. So it's McLaren, Audi, Aston Martin, Porsche, Audi, Ferrari, McLaren, McLaren, Ferrari, McLaren within the top 10. A little bit more variety comes next because 11th, flying under the radar, to use a well-known cliche, is Alexandre Vromont, and the Lexus 11th ahead of Chris Herker's Porsche 12th, Mercedes 13th of Amir Hosseini, Eamon Murphy's Porsche 14th, and the Alberto Garcia Bentley running in 15th place. 16th is where you get the leading Lamborghini. It is Giovanni De Salvo, who is 16th ahead of the penalised from earlier on, Kamil Franchak, and then the second Bentley is 18th, that's the leading pro, Andy Soucek from Ezequiel Perez Companc and David Perrell, the South African driver, Coach Dave himself, down in 20th spot. But right now, it is McLaren that leads the way, but still, the trailblazer for the AM Championship is Mikhail Statsenko in second place, but the gap between the top two has opened up by another few tenths over the last few laps. 25 minutes of the race to go, as now Jesus Cecilia comes up to have a go at Statsenko once again for second place, but that lead gap, Ben, it's getting bigger all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now Yox is consistently better than the rest, and I don't really feel like there's any catching unless he gets caught in traffic and something happens. Naox has just done an amazing job strategically to put himself in that position. Remember, not only is he leading the race, but he's got better tyres. He'll have about the same amount of fuel if he's sensible, but he'll have, he's got, on some people, about 30 minutes better tyres. So he can really push when he needs to, and he doesn't need to. So he's in a really, really happy, strong position. And as you say, Statsenko doing a fantastic job. Yes, he is an AM in the way that this particular competition has been put together, in that silvers were invited and recognised by the organisers, aka Informatica, as people to represent brands. But that doesn't necessarily mean, just because he was missed out on that list, that he's any worse just because he had to go through the AM sort of public lobbies. He is one of the guys that you would see in the very top end of any ACC competition that runs kind of as a private competition that perhaps isn't broadcast, but where most of these people ply their craft.
Selvers McLaren showing its nose to brand rival Petrichenko, who drifts out a little wide. Selva finally gets the crack in the defences he needs. Petrichenko rides the curbs and somehow finds traction. Selva gets a little touch around the outside. Comes Tanitsa's Ferrari. Who's going to come out best? I think Tanitsa might lose another place. Camera sneaking through. Artur Camera just getting by the Ferrari as they continue to climb up through corner 5, 6 and 7 of these S's. He does. I think he's completed the move. So suddenly Patrick Selva having a little lunge at Petrichenko, but Jura Petrichenko held him off. And now it is Camera who has got ahead of Tanitsa. The Ferrari, just for a moment there, thought, oh, I might get both of them. And in fact, he got neither of them and lost a spot. David Tanitsa down to 10th. A little flurry of excitement there. And actually, Niels Noyox, I think, Ben, you're absolutely right. He doesn't need to push any harder than he is. The gap, I was about to say, was just under 5 seconds for the last half dozen, maybe a dozen laps, despite Statsenko defending so hard against the Aston Martin, his second place. But Noyox now just creeping away. The gap's just around the 5 second mark, 4.7, 5 point something. So Noyox just keeping the car alive, as long as he doesn't do a Senna Monaco moment by nodding off in the final 20 odd minutes, then he'll be made in the shade. But the McLaren Ferrari battle continues. The Ferrari shuffled to the back of the pack, and still Patrick Selva in 9.69 trying to find a way by Jura Petrichenko and not succeeding last lap. Let's see if he's any better this lap, because it does look like Petrichenko is slightly the stopper in this McLaren bottle.
I agree with that. The other nice thing about this is we get to 6:30 local time within the way that the Assetto Corsa platform is set up, that it looks ever more like an endurance race, doesn't it? Now the headlights start to take on more of a feature, and yes, it gets a little bit darker as the light fades, but there is something always, doesn't matter what the venue, there's something magical about cars in the dusk as the headlights start to have more of an impact. So it just adds to the flavour of a proper 2-hour endurance race, doesn't it?
It makes it feel longer. Any race that finishes in the dark, even if it's only 20 minutes, it makes it feel like a longer race.
No, you go and stand under floodlights and watch a national hot rod race at Ipswich Stadium. It doesn't feel long. It takes about 7 minutes. Man up, was what he would say.
That's under
There's someone going backward.
Yes, David. Really, yeah. So that was Tanitsa having a lunge, and that didn't work at all well, did it? Looking further forward, this is Enzo Benito trying to find a way by Giorgio Simonini, but the Ferrari, Selva, Petrichenko both dropping back. Is that right? Camera squeezed through all of them onto Camera.
Indeed.
So who?
The Camera's lost.
So that was
lost
Selva
9 seconds.
That Selva's trying to get by Petrichenko there, wasn't he? and it's Camera and Tanitsa who survived. So we need to have a little look at that again.
Camera
we were busy
was
being distracted by hot rods.
Camera was through in a flash. Thanks, Ben. Right. So, Camera is up into 7th. Tanitsa is in 8th. Selva 9th. This battle is still raging on as Bonito finally gets level with Simonini, but the Audi, as we have seen in the past, is really good accelerating out of corners. And there it is again. Absolutely dead set level midway through the Casio triangle, and once again Bonito is staring at the back of the Audi, and he's had enough of doing that.
He can't calculate a way through there, can he? Nils Noyok still leads from the battle for second. Mikhail Statsenko holding off Jesus Cecilia. Then the Porsche in 4th place, and Jan-Marcel Dietrich is just sort of a little bit in no man's land, nowhere near the lead trio. And Enzo Benito and Giorgio Simonini, look, you can see the Porsche just tantalizingly in front of the Audi. Simonini's got more things to think about, though, than Dietrich's Porsche. He's still worried that the Ferrari is going to find a way through. Enzo Benito, the only way I think he hasn't tried is going over the top of the Audi. Maybe that's the next move.
Give him time. So, there are 20 minutes to go. He's not run out of ideas just yet. Great battle, though, this. They might be in different parts of the world. They might be on sims rather than in real cars, but when the graphics are this good, you forget all about that and you just enjoy a proper motor race, a proper battle. And still, Simonini is able to fend off Enzo Benito as they power their way out of the corner once more. Remember, these two tied on points in the Silver Championship, so very evenly matched indeed.
And what's really fascinating, we've been watching a lot of this battle, obviously, is the way the two cars corner so differently. The different line that the Audi uses compared to the Ferrari. Watch it as they come out of the final chicane and onto the start-finish straight. If we're still watching them then, the Audi takes a much tighter line. The Ferrari runs almost all the way around the white line on the outside. And yet they don't seem to have any different speed by the time they get down to turn 1.
No, indeed. Replay
Here's
here
the
of
replay
what kicked off before.
after,
Go on,
yeah.
Ben, talk us through it.
Petrenko is the one that loses out the least here, trying to find a way, well, not trying to find a way past at all, just binning Patrick Selva, coming back onto the circuit and taking out all of that battle. So this was the battle that was just behind Enzo Benito and Simonini, and it's been decimated. Petrenko is still 7th, Selva is still 8th, but Camera's down in 10th and Tanitsa 11th.
But that was Selva trying to get past Petrichenko, and then Petrichenko got spun around the nose of his car, and yeah, Tanitsa was and DeSalvo, the other Camera, they were the ones that lost out, particularly the Ferrari. I mean, in a real world, red flag, race over. That's the great thing again about virtual racing, is that if you have serious contact like that, I don't have to fill over the final 20 minutes of the broadcast while David goes to the hospitality suite.
I was waiting for that. I'm surprised it's taken this long to have that comment.
Eventually, Ben, a bus will come along.
The interesting thing about Camera's and Tanitsa's cars are hobbled. They are lapping 3 seconds back over what they were able to do before. So, unsurprisingly, by the looking at that contact, as you say, that would be very much race over. They've bounced off the McLaren, have continued, but they are not running anywhere near what they could be. And I'm afraid that's kind of day over for Camera and Tanitsa. Somehow, Petrenko and Selva, though, seem to be running slightly better.
Well, there's Tanitsa losing out to Chris Hooker, look, in the Porsche that goes round the outside. So, going back to your hobbled point, Tanitsa is easy prey, isn't he now, because the Porsche, look, picks up its skirts, through it goes, gains track position. So Hooker goes up into 11th spot. David Tanitsa fading all the time with 16.5 minutes to go. And while we've been looking at other dramas, Noyok has managed to build the lead gap a little bit further. You have to feel a bit for Statsenko in all of this. He did such a ripper job in the first half of the race, and now he's fading in 2nd place. But he has got Cecilio right up behind him. Meantime here, gang of cars heading up towards the chicane. Amir Hosseini is at the back of it, which means there's going to be action for sure. Tanitsa losing out, and there, look, Hooker goes ahead of Camera. So Chris Hooker gets up into the top 10. Camera is losing ground. Tanitsa is losing ground. Amir Hosseini is on the attack. Look, he's got the inside line. He's up alongside Arthur Camera. Is he going to go through? He's up the curb. but surely the Mercedes is going to power off the corner with better grunt. Yes, it does. Look at that. Easy peasy through goes Amir Hosseini. And as he breaks the timing beam, that will put him up now into 11th place.
Yeah, and of course, Cameras, McLaren got a very substantial hit there. So Camera in the McLaren and Tanitsa in the Ferrari, that is the battle of the halt and the lame, isn't it? Damage central, and they're, again, going to continue to increase that before we get to the checkered flag. I think final 15 minutes may not be the friendliest, although neither of them were actually the ones that started that four-car pile-up. They were both the innocent bystanders who got caught in the crossfire. Hosseini up to 11th. Who would have thought that? Not me after his drive-through penalty early in the race. But we only have 21 cars still running. So the BMW last of the 21, because Samir Ibrahimi, Axel Petit and the rest all in the pits and out of the race. Statsenko in second, still holding off the Aston Martin for that second position. And Statsenko, of course, not just doing a good job in the beginning of the race, but qualifying on pole on pace as well. So the Audi's not just a good race car, it's a good qualifying car. Again, another reason why it was so popular in all of the series.
And although they are losing pace and dropping down the order, this battle is still raging on. Look, as Tonitza looks for a way past Camera, the virtual Ferrari tries to find a way past the digital Camera.
Very good. Statsenko in the red, white and black Audi, holding on from the Aston Martin. And I think the Porsche's getting closer. I think the Porsche's getting closer quite quickly. Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Rover Racing Porsche. 14 minutes, is there a chance he might end up on the podium? It's not a big opportunity, but I think there is potential there that something might happen for him, because these two are getting slower. And don't forget, the Aston Martin stopped after about 45 minutes, so that was in the pits very early on. Statsenko just after the hour mark, and then Nils Neuhaus, our race leader, quite a long way after the hour mark. Yellow flags out and gone.
And back on. And back off. Yes, yeah. So somebody's having a bit of a tank slapper, I think. On the road, off the road, back on again. So even a late race, there can be dramas.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why Nils Neuhaus actually, perversely, Statsenko, his adrenaline will be absolutely racing, holding off Cecilia in every single corner. Nils Neuhaus, who's keeping himself very firmly motivated by trying to set quicker and quicker laps on his slightly fresher tyres. He's just got to make sure that he doesn't overcook it on his own, because it's quite easy to allow your concentration to wander. David, put that stapler down.
With 13 minutes to go, we are looking at the second place battle. Mikhail Statsenko versus Jesus Cecilia, and half a second is the margin between them. But yes, the Aston is just ever so discernibly dropping away, isn't it? Lap by lap, the gap creeps up by hundreds into tenths. And so Statsenko is looking a little more secure in second place. But the trouble is, this is all coming too late to then release him to do anything about Nils Neuhaus. So it looks as though the lead gap, barring any surprises that are lurking in the system, is going to go Neuhaus' way this race. Now lower down here, you've still got Petrochenko versus Selva and Alexander Vromel, who's done a really good, solid job. He's hauled that Lexus around, he's kept out of trouble. Yes, okay, he's benefited from other people making mistakes or having problems, but there he is, running in the top 9 and doing a good job.
But if you don't hit stuff, you tend to have a better race. And he hasn't hit quite as much as the people who are no longer in front of him. Meanwhile,
True.
we are back again. So much McLaren Ferrari action in this race, hasn't there been? And Camera just about hanging on there, way over the track limits line. But Tanitsa having a little look. Now, the question is, what's the damage done to each of these cars? Is one of them turning right with alacrity but refusing to turn left? Is one of them failing to slow down quite as well as it used to? It's hard to tell from the outside. There should be bits hanging off all over them.
Well, Tonitza has finally made the move and he's gone back ahead of Arthur Camera. So the Ferrari now moves itself back up into 12th place. These two drivers, both stars really of the Silver Series. It's a shame they are so far down the order, really, because they're not perhaps illustrating their normal pace. But Tonitza up into 12th. It's been a good battle to enjoy that. We've had a lot of exposure for Camera.
Yeah, half an opportunity and Tonitza was by in a flash, but that's not what's happening here. Statsenko still holding off the Aston Martin. And, you know, has the gap been as big as half a second in the last 40 minutes between these two? I wouldn't say so, because when Noyox came out in front of the queue, these two were nose to tail, weren't they?
Lead gap though up to 6 seconds, so Statsenko is now too far back, and actually Cecilia possibly mounting another charge, look, because he's really good coming into the braking zone. He gets right onto the back of the Audi, but one is tempted to say little good will it do him, because we know how good the Audi punches out of slow corners. Look, it happens again. Look at the gap, look at the gap, look at the gap. A length, 2, 3 lengths as they straighten up and boom past the pits. But the damage is done. It's now going to take Cecilia a good few corners to get back onto the tail of the Audi.
Yeah. Straight line speed is only any good if the straight line is long enough for you to employ it. And again, it's that so good under braking, he closes right up, and then he can't make a move at the apex, and the moment he starts to pick up the throttle, Statsenko's already pulling away from him. So frustrating. You know you've got the ability to outbrake him, you just can't get close enough off the corners to use it at the end of the straight. It's not a particularly long front straight here at Suzuka, and that's really why the Audis have been able to hold off so many other different cars.
Now the next question for Ben. Go on, Ben.
I think another factor in this kind of ability for the Audi is that car's got much better tyres. Cecilia was one of our first stoppers, so probably 20 minutes longer on those tyres. He's still using map 1, so he's not saving fuel, but he is on a higher traction control setting, which will have basically more interference from the traction control to control wheel spin and to keep the car pointing in the right direction. The Aston Martin using traction control setting 5 rather than Statsenko, who is on 3, therefore slightly freer out of the corners, and you can kind of see it. Yep. But the Aston Martin needs that because the tyres are more worn.
David and I pointing at each other, drive-through penalty. The stewards have finally sorted the wheat from the chaff in that 4-car pile-up and said Selva started it, which he did, whether by accident or design, by turning Petrichenko around and then involving almost everybody else in the race. So Selva with a drive-through, and unfortunately there is Patrick Selva in that red and black McLaren, and that will drop him out of any top 10 contention.
At the risk of being pedantic, my learned friend, Selva gets a stop-go of 20 seconds. It's a drive-through for Chris Herker in number 99 Porsche. So Selva, who is 8th at the moment, and he's in this battle pack, he is going to tumble down the order, whereas Herker, who is 10th, gets, in comparison, the fairly innocuous drive-through.
Your younger eyes and 52-inch plasma screen beat my slightly older eyes and 11-inch laptop screen. I could see that it was red. I guessed it was 10. It's 20 seconds. Selva's in the pits.
I couldn't hear all of that for the violin playing in the background. So
I thought it was your slightly older ears. Here's the battle for second place. Still continuing, Statsenko. They are losing quite a lot of time now, though, aren't they, to Noyox? He's now 6.5 seconds. It's barely been over 5 for 40 minutes.
The question I was going to pose to Ben a moment ago was about Dietrich in 4th place in the Porsche. And Ben, if you can keep an eye to his lap times, I noticed that the gap has actually just crept up by a 10th. But with these two back squabbling again for 2nd and 3rd places, does the Porsche have a chance of being able to reel them in by the end? Or is that a little bit too much to hope for now? 2.8 seconds between 3rd and 4th, but can Dietrich, there he is in the background, does he stand a chance, or do you think he's too far back?
Well, what good thing is he hasn't got somebody crawling over his rear end, so he's able to focus purely on what's going on ahead of him. And I think, you know, we've seen before when these guys start squabbling, running side by side, we saw it earlier in the race with Husseini, you lose a second and a second and a half a lap. The gap is not that big, 2.6, 2.5 seconds. So, yeah, I think 1 or 2 laps of them properly going side by side, and then the Porsche's in the mix.
Well, let's see whether they can get themselves together. Yeah, it's going to be entertaining to say the least, isn't it? What have we got? 6.5 minutes on the clock. Remember, the flag goes out the first time the leader crosses the line once the 2 hours are up. And to the outside goes Cecilia. This is a chance. Is it going to pay off for him? Yes! Gets his nose in front. He's done it! Cecilia around the outside. But look, the Audi again punches off the corner. Is it going to be able to find a way back up alongside? The answer this time is no. Cecilia covers off the inside line. Dietrich is bringing the gap down as best he can, but now that Cecilia is through into 2nd place, can the Aston drive away? Well, first up to the outside line, tries to go the Audi, but to no avail. Statsenko is in 3rd place, but Cecilia leaves half a gap on the inside line. Boy, he worked hard for that second place, and he does not want to give it away now with just under 6 minutes on the clock.
The question is, has he got the tyres to hang on? Statsenko didn't seem to be an awful lot slower than the Aston Martin. If the Aston is having to work the traction control harder to keep those rear tyres alive, how much can he take advantage of that change of position? Already he seems to have pulled out a good half a second over Mikhail Statsenko. Nils Neuox, 8 seconds up the road and 5 minutes. He's not going to catch him. He's got to hang on to the second place. Now he's worked so hard to grab it for the Aston Martin.
So Nils Neuox then, after that demon pit stop that propelled him into the lead of the race, now has a nearly 8-second advantage over Jesus Dithilia, who actually, having finally got past Statsenko, is pulling away. Jan-Marcel Dietrich, look, is bringing down the gap. It's almost as though some of the fight has gone out of Statsenko, because suddenly that gap is coming down between third and fourth. So could we get a silver 1, 2, 3 out of this?
Well, we probably ought to, shouldn't we? Because they were the guys that were chosen as the best representatives of the various different brands. However, is it that Statsenko's Audi is finally starting to run out of grip a little quicker than the Porsche and the Aston Martin did? A little further back, Vromont attacking Petrichenko, metaphorically rather than literally, hopefully, at the moment. Petrichenko's probably had quite enough assaults, although his car actually, despite the fact that he was basically the cue ball in the whole 4-car pile-up, seems to have survived relatively well. However, the Lexus is closing in and seems to have enough pace. Whether he's got room or time to get by, 4 minutes on the clock, is another point entirely.
So out of 130R into the Casio triangle, here comes Alexander Vromont, who's had a really good, solid race. As Martin said, if you don't hit things, it is going to help your chances, but he's kept out of trouble. He may not have had the ultimate pace, but there he is. He's chipped his way up the order, and Alexander Vromont then powering his way up towards the line. He was only 20th in the Silver Series Championship, but he had occasional good days. But it's good that he's been in this race, and like the majority, fighting to the very end, trying to get as good a result as he can. Petrichenko is another driver that's managed to repel most challenges. I know he got involved in that incident a few laps back, but he's still there in the race. He's still running in 7th place. Yes, he's dropped a lot of time to the leading 6 cars, but he's also keeping Vromont at bay, doing a good job of that.
You've got to say, being shunted from behind is not getting involved in an accident. That's somebody involving you in an accident. So Petrichenko just hasn't had the pace of the front runners, has he? It's not been a top 6 car. But you're right. I mean, he's doing it. He's clinging on again, like Statsenko, by his fingernails, and doing a pretty good job at it as well. Vromont is close, but I think this is going to be no cigar for the Lexus driver. However, he's the only Lexus at the moment that is going to take the checkered flag, and to do so in the top 10, that's a pretty good afternoon at the office.
Third and fourth, Statsenko to Dietrich, the gap is much reduced, 11/10ths of a second now. So with 2.5 minutes, give or take, on the clock, it could well be that Dietrich is able to have one roll of the dice. Look, another 10th pull back here. So can we get the Porsche into the top 3?
Who is Ufuk Barber in the BMW offended in the final 3 minutes of the race that he's got a drive-through penalty? I didn't see what happened to that Turkish blue car, but unfortunately he's had a drive-through. But Camera has had, and I think he stopped in the pits earlier, Camera, and so he is running very badly damaged further back. Here is our race leader, lest we forget, Nils Neuox out front.
Statsenko is being shown as in 6th place. Now, what has happened to the Audi of the man that dominated the first half of the race? Statsenko seemingly has got a problem. Now, is this grip? Is this fuel? Is this something mechanical? Or has he had an off somewhere? Whether Ben can shed any light on this from his vantage point in the pit lane, we'll find out in a moment or two. We'll let him go and research it. But as Neuox pulls away, suddenly we have got the changes. Dietrich 3rd, Simonini 4th, Bonito 5th, and Statsenko tumbles to 6th.
So now no Audi in the podium positions at the moment, but Dietrich and Simonini less than a second apart. And if you're battling for 4th, that's one thing. However, if you're Simonini in the Audi and you're battling for a podium finish with the car in front of you, that's an entirely different deal. It is a McLaren that leads, an Aston Martin that's second, a Porsche Audi battle for 3rd. We're looking a little further back at De Salvo in the lead Lambo, the 2 Lamborghinis. Franchak right behind him. And of course, the top 3 in the Silver Series and the top 2 in the AM Series than Lamborghinis are all going to test a real Lamborghini, courtesy of the FFF racing team. So that's some kind of good fun result, isn't it?
Absolutely right. So, Dietrich, a second clear of Simonini. Ben, any news on what happened to Statsenko to drop him back into 6th place?
I found him facing the wrong direction on the exit of 130R. So
right.
I think he spun there's nobody around him. He spun on his own accord, just lost the rear end, and, the tyres have gone, and perhaps he should have had one more click on his TC. Oh, it was really late, actually. He was accelerating out the corner, and the car just spat him around.
Yeah, that sounds like he's completely run out of tyres and luck. Started on pole position, led more than half the race, was in a podium spot. Mikhail Statsenko, the Russian Audi driver, in 6th position in the final seconds of the race. The clock is at 0. 2 hours have come and gone, and when Nils Noyaux next gets to the line, he will be bringing the race to its conclusion. The checkered flag will be out and ready for him. Sicilia and Dietrich Simonini, that will be the battle for 3rd position, and it's still alive.
We've got a car in trouble there. Look, one of the McLarens pulling to one side. We understand that Nils Noyaux' pit stop is under investigation. It will be investigated after the race. Alberto Garcia has just picked up a drive-through penalty. So this battle pack is about to start its last lap. Bentley into the pits, that is Garcia to serve the drive-through. But Nils Noyaux then, there he is on his last lap of the race. As I say, there's that pit stop that's going to be investigated after the race.
In fact, we're hearing now that there will be no further action on the pit stop, so the checkered flag awaits Nils Noyaux.
Okay.
He is clear and free. 7:15 local time in the Suzuka circuit, and in the gathering gloom, he will head towards the checkered flag. Penalty for Garcia on the final lap as well to be served, the drive-through. So a few penalties in the final seconds.
Well, we saw Garcia go in to serve that, so he gets that out of the way. So that means then that Nils Noyaux is going to come through for his only win of the season, and it's going to be in the grand finale. He will make history by winning the first SRO GT Esports 2-hour race. It has been a mighty effort, a very good pit stop. He's got traffic to dodge around. Look, the McLarens together. That is Arthur Camera, his teammate, who lines up for the photo finish in true endurance style. Nils Noyaux wins the grand finale of the SRO GT Esports Series from Jesus Cecilia in 2nd place, Jan Marcel Dietrich in 3rd. And those 2 hours have absolutely flown by.
Yes, now Jan Marcel Dietrich crosses the line, 8/10 ahead of Giorgio Simonini in 3rd and 4th position. Enzo Benito 5th, waiting for Statsenko. Oh, yes, well, that's not quite the photo opportunity that the McLaren team would hope for. Statsenko comes across the line in 6th position. Guys, don't do donuts in the first corner. Well done to the stewards for sorting out the little question mark. It was all to do with Nils Noyaux and the speed of his pit stop, but he used manual selections, manual start of the pit stop and the manual finish of it. So he all round used his knowledge, his experience to get the most of that. There is the Lexus coming across the line in 9th place. Alexandre Vromont ahead of Eamon Murphy in his Lazarus Racing Porsche, finishing in 10th, and everybody having a little hug and a cuddle down in the first corner gravel trap.
But we have to say that the SRO Esports GT Series has been a big hit these lockdown months. The commitment from drivers, from the organisers, and from everybody involved has made it well worth all the effort. We've become used to some new names, a new style of racing, and Nils Noyaux, perhaps appropriately, Ben, given his involvement in esports racing and the level of his involvement in esports racing, comes out on top in this grand finale.
And our pro winner, sorry Ben, our pro winner, just to round it all out, Ezekiel Kompak, who ran 1 hour and 95 minutes, or seemingly forever and ever, on his first tank of fuel, and comfortably ahead of Andy Soucek and David Perrell.
Well, there's going to be another GT Sports series soon, the GT Asia equivalent for esports. But Ben, it's been a great series all round, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Sad to kind of put an end to this one, but we start very soon with the Asian series on the 29th of August, so only a few weeks to wait. And that will be in a very similar format to what we've already seen here for the SRO Esports, with a Pro and Silver series for the Silver driver, for the Pro Sim drivers and for the Pro Real Life drivers. So expect to see the likes of Dan Wells, for instance, reappear in that one with his involvement in the Asian GT Championship. They do have a Real World Series going on at the end of the year as well, but they were slightly frustrated they didn't have their own series. So they've been hastily put together, and great work from GT Asia to get the championship up and running for the 29th of August. Niels Naujoks wins by 6.1 seconds over Jesus Cecilia. Great work from the Porsche of Dietrich in third position, Simonini fourth, and then Enzo Benito in fifth position for Ferrari. Again, you just wanted more from those Ferraris, and they just never quite got there. Statsenko, the best of the AMs, and really the only one that figured against that flood of silver drivers. And as Martin said, a great alternative strategy from Compact to go very, very long on the stint 1, and then in stint 2, a short stint where he could push hard, and in the end had a decent advantage over Andy Susek and David Perrell. And great to have those pro drivers with us. Really, really awesome to have that representation, knowing that they would not necessarily be at the very, very sharp end of the field. So it's kind of goodbye from the sim racing world, certainly for David, as he goes back to full-time touring car racing every weekend until October.
I'm going to miss it, because it has been an education as well as a very enjoyable few months. But you never know. The Asia dates look as though they might slot in around other things. So I don't think I'm done with esports yet. I haven't got around to buying a sim. Maybe that's going to come at the end of the season. But you never know.
And obviously Martin's legs would never get into a sim. They're far too long. So.
They're only simulated long legs.
And
They're
plenty of simulation
long.
racing, plenty of racing for you still, Martin, involved in commentary in the virtual world.
Yes, absolutely. The virtual world continues to mix and match weekends with the real world. So, yeah, it's just yet another motorsport calendar that's going to clash all the way through the season. But it's, as David said, it's been really entertaining to watch. Every championship that I've been commentating on, they've said, what's the difference between this and commentating on real cars? And the overridingly, and we've already had this evening, the difference is that David and I have to do our own technical work, and that comes as a big shock, because that's not what we're hired for. That's not where we earn our money. We earn our money watching things on television and telling people about it, not plugging wires in and trying to figure out why they don't work. So globally, that's the big difference. For me, the racing is just as intense as we've seen in this race as any other 2-hour sports car race or a GT race you care to mention. And other than that, yeah, barrier repairs, they're singularly absent. So I'm all for it, definitely.
And no safety cars, no red flags, and no barrier repairs. It's a joy, isn't it? And on ACC, Assetto Corsa Competizione, this platform, you have now GT4 cars as well as GT3 cars. You have dynamic weather. You have the ability to race throughout the whole 24 hours. And I think one day, very soon, we may see a full 24-hour simulation of perhaps the Spa 24 hours in the winter season. Once we got rid of all those little bugs and niggles that it takes to put on an event like this. I was hoping that we might get a chance to talk to Niels Naujoks, but no news from our guys in the production office, and therefore I think we have to say a goodbye and leave the last words to virtual Jack Nichols.
Hard risks. Yeah, hello.
Oh, no, I've just said goodbye, and Niels Naujoks is here. Niels, what a drive. Just how long did it take you to establish that setup and that kind of strategy would be the right way to go for this finale?
So the majority of the work first was done by Arthur, but I don't know, we usually start like 2 weeks before the race or so, and then he took the first week because I didn't have too much time, and then I joined for the second week, and the setup didn't really need too many adjustments, and so we had a very good base to work from. I did a little adjustment, but overall we didn't invest too much, to be honest.
Yeah,
we had a setup probably entirety of the season that just worked, and we knew how the car worked, and we just adjusted it a bit for what Suzuka required.
So what was the idea then about going so much longer than the rest of your field in that first stint?
I have no clue really, because we felt let's just do 50-50. So we have a 2-hour race, let's stop after 1. I have no idea what the other guys were doing, to be honest. So for us, this was like the only choice we really had.
But then I mean, in the first stint, we didn't really see too much of you. You were late in the bottom of the top 10, and then all of a sudden appearing at the top of the timesheets after your pit stop. Was there anything special that you were able to do in the pit stop to gain an advantage, like fuel less or not change tires?
I mean, the limiting factor in the pits is always a tire change, which lasts exactly 30 seconds, and the refueling usually takes less than that, and it's done at the same time. So, no, not really. Everybody should have a pit stop of 30 seconds. The only way you can gain time is by parking in the perfect place, and then, like, the mechanics start immediately, and this is probably where you can gain a second or two or so.
Well, somehow you managed it, and then that pace in the second stint was unbelievable, just banging in those low 2 minutes every single lap.
Yeah, I think I was expecting, like in the practice, we were a couple tenths faster, but I guess the track was different, temperatures were different, so I couldn't replicate that. I was expecting all the cars really to be at my neck for the rest of the race, but I'm not too sure why they were lacking a bit, because at the start of the race they were clearly faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And just how much does it mean to get this victory in the finale? I know that you were preparing, mentally preparing a lot for this particular race, and obviously the series was one thing, but this final race with that element of extra strategy was another bonus.
Let's say if I take my whole SRO races as I don't know, as a storyline, then it started nice in Monza with some casualties on the way. Then the series itself went like a little bit up and down, and I think just this is finally the result that I always wanted to have during the season already.
Well, Nils, congratulations. You are the grand finale winner of the SRO Esports, and I know you're heading to Lamborghini in September as well as a finalist for that. So flying high in the world of ACC, and great to have you on the top of this podium in the McLaren.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Nils Nyhjorks then, the champion of the grand finale, and David and Martin will be relaxing in their chairs. Thank you so much for their wise words and expertise. Really great fun to have the two of them together. And as I said a few moments ago, the last words are with our virtual Jack Nicholls.
What a way to end the SRO GT Esports series. A fantastic 2-hour race around Suzuka. And we'll be back at Suzuka at the end of August for the first round of the GT Esports Asia competition. And if it's anything like the European action, it's going to be really worth tuning in for. In the real world, the next races in the GT World Challenge powered by AWS come up this weekend. Europe, the action is in Misano, and in America, it's in Sonoma, California. So it'll be great to see the real world action kicking off. So thank you very much for joining us in this SRO Esport GT series. Thanks to Fanatec, to Assetto Corsa Competizione and Kunos Simulazione, AK, and of course for you for joining us. We'll see you very soon.